Hello everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of the Story to Screen podcast, the movie podcast where we review all different kinds of movies, new and old. I'm your host, Chris, and welcome to a very special episode tonight. We'll be doing our very first audio commentary for The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, from 2001. Tonight I will be joined by Benjamin Curlee, one of my regular co-hosts, and special guest, Cliff Broadway from the OneRing.net. So this will be our first part of a 6-part epic journey with Cliff going through all 6 Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit films as well. So, this is how you're going to do it, folks. Put in the extended edition, doesn't matter if Blu-ray or DVD. Make sure you are also on the chapter section. When I count to 3, press play on the prologue chapter. And that is where we will begin.
In the lands of Middle Earth, legend tells of the Dark Lord Sauron and the ring that would give him the power to enslave the world. Lost for centuries, it has been sought by many, and has now found its way into the hands of the most unlikely person imaginable. Sauron needs only this ring to cover all the lands in darkness.
What must I do?
The ring must be destroyed.
The ring must be cast back into the fires of Mount Doom.
There is evil there that does not sleep.
Sauron's forces are already moving. They will find the ring and kill the one who carries it.
Go! Frodo! Come on, Frodo!
I cannot do this alone.
You have my sword.
And you have my bow.
And my axe.
This task was appointed to you, and if you do not find a way, no one will.
The enemy has many spies. Birds, beasts.
Something draws near. I can feel it.
Get off the road!
Hide! You must remember, Frodo, the ring is trying to get back to its master. It wants to be found. Let us hope that our presence may go unnoticed. They are coming.
We must stand back!
I wish the ring had never come to me.
Back, you devils!
I wish none of this had happened.
You will find your courage.
If you want him, come and claim him.
Three, 2, 1, hit play. And we're off. Here's the New Line Cinema logo right now.
The very familiar spinning New Line reels of film. And it's funny, nobody shoots on film anymore these days.
No.
Yeah, I know, right?
Everything's digital. New Line Cinema presents. Now, is New Line officially, what's the word I'm looking for? A deceased, lack of a better term, deceased company, or are they still around?
They were absorbed into Warner Brothers, and they are part and so I guess they should now be technically thought of as, a fiefdom within the larger mega kingdom of Warner Brothers.
Okay. here we are with the voice of Galadriel played by Kate Blanchett, and I actually thought the choice of Galadriel narrating the prologue, I think was actually the right choice, because here you have this individual who was around during this point in time in history with the creation of the ring, and to have somebody who lived through that whole history, I think was a good choice, because originally, who was it? Frodo, Elrond, and Gandalf were originally considered to do the prologue narration. I don't know if any of the actors.
There's John Howe and Alan Lee standing in the background as one of the 9 older kings.
Do you know it? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just so thrilled to see the accuracy of the way the 3 elven rings were handled. That one shot includes, in the background, Gil-galad, who then later passed his ring, Vilya, to Elrond. And then there's also Círdan in the background, and the shipwright, and he handed his ring to Gandalf when Gandalf arrived at the shores of Middle-earth. Remember?
Yes, yeah. Now, Sauron just creeped me out when I saw this as a little kid. I mean, the first time I saw this, just that mask, and just terrified me as a child. I mean, they made him so scary looking. It's Benedict Cumberbatch. Remember that, everybody.
It is. Actually, that's my good friend Sala Baker there. Yeah, it's so nice to see him in his full regalia, because that was his biggest moment.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this was our first taste of the new software that the Weta Digital team was trying. It was the Massive.
Oh, yeah, Massive, yeah.
This is incredible right here. This is incredible.
It is.
Imagine the impression of a 10-year-old. That which was me when this first came out.
I mean, the only other way to recreate this kind of shot would be to do, a lot of rotoscoping and compositing and doing the scene multiple times with, extras placed in here, there, and the other. But to be able to do it digital like that, with foreground being real and the rest of it CG, yeah, that's immensely helpful.
That's one last shot of Gil-galad with his spear, and
Elrond, Hugo Weaving, love him.
Harry Sinclair, my buddy Harry Sinclair there as Isildur.
He's the director, isn't he?
He is, yes. And a friend of Peter's.
Oh, that is incredible. Just that shot of Sauron just towering over them.
It is the effect of the scale, especially effective in that shot and that shot right there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
They wanted to have Sauron reappear in The Return of the King.
Yes.
And it ended up being changed digitally to that troll that attacked Aragorn.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, oh yeah. We will talk about that when we get to Return of the King.
That would have been the bookend reappearance of Sauron in this form again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have bookended the front and the ends of the films.
Yeah.
My favorite shot.
Oh, yeah, that's a great shot. The ring just coming down. I was kind of wondered if this would... Oh, go ahead.
I just see so clearly more details that I'm looking at in this Blu-ray as I see the 7 stars on the white tree on Isildur's breastplate mail.
Oh, I know, right?
I remember
just the thought that they put into the costume design. It's amazing.
I remember as a kid, some people actually thought when Sauron exploded, everybody actually dies when they all fell back. It was apparently not, but I thought a lot of people were actually thinking, like, are they all dead? Did they all die or something like that?
And the leftover pieces of the Maiar spirit of Sauron crumble into dust right in Isildur's hand. It's very cool.
I've always wondered what he looked like behind the mask. That could have been...
I couldn't imagine. Perhaps just a terrifying void.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Within the mask. Within his helmet, I imagine.
Now, you may know this better, Cliff. Did everyone die that Isildur's army? Did everyone perish, or were there some survivors?
No, they were ambushed and they were all killed, I believe.
Okay.
I believe. This part that's added into the extended edition harkens back to the Ralph Bakshi animated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Even this shot of the ring sinking down. Yeah, there's some very specific. I wouldn't say a tip of the hat. They're just some specific shots. I think that Peter was very glad to bring in. We'll get to another one later when the Nazgul appears and Frodo says, "Get off the road."
Oh yeah, definitely.
which they shot in Mount Victoria. I got to visit Mount Vic when I went on my first trip to Wellington, when I was down there sneaking around on the sets as I was reporting for the OneRing.net.
Now, I don't know if that was just an actor or that was actually Andy Serkis' hand that just appeared.
That's an unending mystery. I would like to know too. But here's one of our earliest bits of motion capture performance they'd shot very early.
Was this? Oh, this was Serkis. I thought this was. I thought that.
This is mocap. This is some of Andy's very first mocap shots right there, and everything else was a test drive for Two Towers because they knew they had an extra year to work out the kinks and that to get him to look the way he wanted.
Yeah.
So
there was something kind of like frog-like in his face. I don't know. There's like, especially in the lip area, it doesn't look like the exact same.
It's face. Not the refined character that comes up later. No.
Proto Gollum. Now the terminology, the exact wording of Galadriel's narration at this point is fantastic. When she speaks of the ring as if it has a will of its own, and she says it abandoned Gollum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made very clear to the audience that. Then she says, and then something the ring did not intend. And the audience is all of a sudden starting to realize we're having a relationship with this piece of jewelry.
Yeah. We just spotted Ian Holmes' first scene, and right there, Peter Jackson completely messed up The Hobbit because Martin Freeman's Bilbo was not wearing the same clothes.
Well, I mean, he could do the same thing that George Lucas did, and he could composite the new Bilbo in over it. You know.
Well, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've also heard a lot of whispers in the wind that is the one shot that would have to be changed if Peter does decide to do a George Lucas and do a quote-unquote special edition.
I do kind of wonder if Martin did audition or they did a screen test with that same type of clothing, the blue and the one that Ian Holm just wore. That'd be kind of interesting. I just love Bag End right here. This is just such a beautiful set. So in chronology with the Hobbit, Bilbo's been writing all night so far, if you remember at the beginning of The Hobbit. So,
well, is this the last light of the setting sun on the day before, and Bilbo's about to go riding in through the night?
I don't know. Well, I mean, in the movie, it's already nighttime, and he pulls out the book from the from his bin or from his treasure chest, and he
starts writing in night. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now it's I'm assuming that these daytime shots are matching the same time of day as Bilbo is writing these words.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the impression I would get.
This is
chickens. I love the chickens there in that shot.
Yeah. Now you visited the set. What is it? What is the Hobbiton set like, just in person?
It's the only one-word review I can give you. That's a thing we do, a one-word review. It's idyllic. It is absolutely idyllic. And take out the word absolutely and just believe me that there is no finer place that is as just as comforting and green and agrarian, very, very obviously agrarian, like the way this culture is portrayed in these shots. And there's just, watch where you step because the sheep poo. And it is a sheep farm. And you get to go now and tour the place. They have excellent tours because as, the Hobbit films were shot, they re-gardened and re-greened, and they had the professional greeneries team come back in, and they've replicated all the fronts and the facades of all the environments, and it's just a really beautiful place to visit. It's extraordinary.
Oh, yeah. I would love to visit New Zealand sometime. So, and that's the one place I would like to visit, just the Hobbiton set.
You should go. That party tree, that shot we just saw of the party tree,
yeah.
It's starting to thin now. It's not as robust as the tree gets older now. So if you want to see it while it still has some glory, I would go soon.
Yeah.
See, the big party tree there, in front of Bag End. Yeah. Now, here's the shot where Elijah has already stepped off stage as he left the Hobbit unexpectedly.
Much younger, by the way. Here comes
exact same costume.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Same suspenders.
Yeah. Probably the same book, probably. Ian McKellen, just brings such a grandfatherly presence to him. Like, he doesn't come across, his Gandalf does not come across as someone that you would just want to stay out of his way, nothing like that. When he's around the hobbits, there's just such a grandfatherly nature to him, and I think he just brought that out so well in the and look at that. I mean, just look at that just warm embrace that they're having.
That warm embrace is brilliant, and also I'm continually distracted by those early versions of his eyebrows, because
I know, right?
the wig and makeup department really needed to work things out, and they were just doing like early versions, test runs of the eyebrows at that point.
But the nose is fake, right? I think that was. He's wearing a prosthetic nose.
Ian had a good old time. His prosthetic nose was small and yet noticeable enough to make a change. But Gandalf did have a prosthetic nose. Yes.
I'm just taking everything in. Now, when they casted Elijah, were you pretty confident with the choice, Cliff?
I was very, very pleased with that choice, because Elijah has he has a face that I could so easily ascribe the everyman aspect of Frodo, which is in some ways an essential dynamic of Frodo's character. And Frodo needs to be a completely innocent-looking pup. If Frodo looks like a hard-boiled, person who's been too seasoned by life, it doesn't work for the story. Frodo has to have an essential naivete and a wide-eyed innocence that is a natural part of the dynamic, and that innocence is what gets spoiled and ruined by the ring, the influence of that evil over Frodo's true nature. And I think Elijah was a great, great piece of casting, and I trusted that casting from the very beginning, because that natural look that Elijah has, being so, I suppose,
innocence. There's like an innocence to him.
Yeah,
just a
natural, completely natural everyman innocence that the audience reads right away.
Yeah. Did any of us previously see him in anything that made us feel like that he was really good for the choice? Or what was I should say this. Let me say this instead. What was our previous experiences with Elijah in film? Besides Back to the Future 2, which was a very small role.
Flipper.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Okay.
Then there was the film North, the Rob Reiner film, and I love the look this Hobbit gives Gandalf right here. And
great.
And of course there was the Ice Storm, which was an Ang Lee film, The Ice Storm.
Oh, yeah.
With Sigourney Weaver.
Oh gosh, a long time.
Right.
Can't say that I've seen that one, but I think I've heard of it. I think so. I just love the little kids right there. Just look at Gandalf's expression. This got a huge laugh in the movie theaters.
Always. He delivers it. This character actor who's Everard Proudfoot. That's his name, Everard Proudfoot. He even gets a bit at the birthday party. I
actually thought for a little Easter egg, I thought that he was going to be in The Hobbit for one moment when Bilbo arrives back from his adventures. That would have been a little great cameo. Oh, this is go ahead.
No, I was thinking now that even the Sackville Bagginses didn't have any dialogue in the Battle of the Five Armies. But then again, we have yet to see the extended edition of that.
Yes, so we
as of the time of this recording.
Now, did they build like a small scale set for Ian McKellen? I'm assuming they had to build two different Bag Ends, right? One for McKellen, like in that one shot that we just saw, and then the natural one, which is a pretty big set. Now, I was very familiar with Ian Holm. Like when he finally popped up in the movie, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that guy." I had seen him in a couple British films, and he surprised me when he finally showed up.
I've always loved him. He's very good in The Fifth Element, and I liked him in a lot of other. I think I saw him in.
He was an Alien.
Yes, he was. He was an Alien. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the original. And he was in a great cooking movie. I think it was called Big Night.
Oh, Chariots of Fire. He was great in that movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
That was great. That was actually accidental. Like they were shooting it, and then he turned around, and then he actually banged his head against the beam there.
It's similar to the Two Towers, where Viggo Mortensen actually breaks his toe when he kicks that helmet.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There were quite a few injuries. Even Sean Astin. By the time we get to the end of Fellowship of the Ring, we'll have to recall Sean's getting his foot sliced in the leg.
Early connection to The Hobbit right there.
Yes. I really appreciate the fact that shot of Gandalf standing outside where he says, "What about very old friends?" That was a very fitting way to end Battle of the Five Armies.
It was. Yeah, it connected. It just drove us right into the Fellowship, so it will be interesting when we watch all of them, or when I watch them all chronologically, to see how they fit in, play into each other. Now, what we're seeing here, I think, is what they called a force perspective, I believe.
Gandalf just tricked the shot. Ian just barely bumped the edge of it with his knee, and it disturbs the cheese and the tart that's in the foreground with the candle.
Yeah, I was just noticing that.
It's the only thing that separates the fact that there are two tables, and there's one further in the back that's made to look smaller.
Okay, so
it was a very neat trick, but Ian almost barely bumps it with his knee just at the beginning of that.
Mm.
If you were looking, you would have seen it.
So I'm assuming the little the teapot that he was pouring in was a cup that was further down the table, was another table, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the one was just one, and the one that the little lid that Ian just lifted up was one that was closer to the camera, so to speak, or closer to him, whatever the right terminology is. I've always wondered about this scene, because he's about to describe, I'm feeling thin like butter scraped over too much bread, which is an interesting way of describing how you're feeling. But I was kind of wondering if he's going through that first stage of becoming physically like Gollum, because he's describing thin, and then as we see Gollum, he's a very thin individual, and obviously we can say that because he's underfed, he's been living on fish in the mountains. But I've always kind of wondered what this thing that he's describing being thin is it a physical thing or just something mental?
I do believe that there is a metaphysical connotation to the words in the original text, feeling thin and stretched. And I believe I read something in one of Tolkien's letters about that's the way that the wraiths were created by Sauron. As they left the physical world and they were no longer human, they became thin and stretched until the point where they were thinned out from reality.
Yeah.
From the seen to the unseen world. But man, bless the magical tech wizards, the digital wizards who made that ship blow through that smoke ring. That was such a beautiful bit.
Yeah. Gandalf has some really good lungs, or a throat, to get that shape.
There's something that Peter Jackson has shown that he has really, really got a grip on, and that is what are the essential charms of the people living in the Shire and the quality that Tolkien was writing about, because he captures it all very, very well in all of these scenes, especially.
This is probably one of my favorite parts in the whole movie, just the party scene, because you just... The Hobbiton is almost like this like what is it, like early 19th century England, that type of the type of look to it, this country folk, and it's I think they bring that aspect in pretty well. Old
yes,
English,
they did.
Old England look.
Provincial. Oh, there's Katie. Very, very young Katie Jackson.
Yes, she looks so different than she does now than she did when she was a little kid. And here they come, the two mischiefs. Billy Boy.
Yes, our first appearance of Meriadoc and Peregrine.
Now these two were just complete unknowns. Like when, so to see these two completely different, brand new faces, it was kind of refreshing because I had not seen them in any like BBC. Because a lot of these actors I might see, especially like some of the British actors, I may have seen them in like BBC related stuff. Now, this is great.
I really appreciate that Ian Holm can wiggle his ears like that, wearing the.
Oh, that was him?
That was Ian Holm wiggling his own ears. It's very funny to see the Sackville Baggins' evolution as evil relatives that have never forgiven Bilbo for living that long.
I think any relative that has someone that's outlived them and they're not going to be getting the will anytime soon is probably destined for trouble, probably. Now, do you think at this moment right here he was going to ask him to come with him?
No. Ask Frodo to come with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was... I think that this is a really touching moment where Bilbo is probably for the very first time in his life feeling a family obligation when he's never had any family obligations. Mm-hmm. And he's always been able to run free and go off on an adventure when he wanted to. Yeah. Now he's actually realizing, I need to deal with my family. This is my adopted heir,
Yeah.
But I love the fireworks designs. All the fireworks designs in the whole movie are great.
Yeah. I was going to wonder if they actually managed to capture the Smaug firework, if it actually looks kind of similar. I haven't really done an analysis of if it looks very similar to the Smaug in the Hobbit films.
Oh no, there's nothing at all. It's just that the idea of how someone like Gandalf could spend his time trying to create these amazing magical fireworks just for these hobbits, and when he's a many, many thousands-year-old Maiar spirit himself, he's got better things to do to be a guardian of Middle Earth. But he's got this special. Anyways, go ahead, please.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was going to say that cake looks delicious, actually.
Oh my gosh.
Looks just amazing. I bet it was a real cake. It probably wasn't, but... Now, this line right here that Ian's about to say, the
much spoofed and much, yeah.
What is it? I know half of you as well as I should like, and I like the other half as well as you should. That must have taken... There must have been so many takes with that line, because I'm sure Ian was not able to communicate it the way that he does in the movie, as we just saw. They must have done so many takes.
The speech is truncated from the one that's in the book. However, it's just as effective, and the best parts of Peter Jackson's efforts are when he and his co-writers stick with Tolkien, and when they stick with actual dialogue and really specific things that happen in the book. They're iconic.
Yeah.
And they really pop. I complain often about Eowyn's encounter with the Witch King because they really truncated her famous speech that everyone knows and loves from the books.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why this birthday party speech is very, adored. All the fans adored this. This is the way it's adapted, and the way he turns invisible, and we hear Howard Shore's score indicating all these light hobbit steps invisible through the garden, and then pop, there we go, got my ring back in my pocket. So it's so cute, it's so fun, because it's exactly like Tolkien, and it sticks with the original. The less deviations, the better, to keep Tolkien fans happy in general.
Yeah, seriously.
This was... Now he's on I believe Ian's on a separate stage. I don't know if he's on green screen or if he's on the smaller set in this scene. I know Ian's obviously on the actual life-size set, but I can't remember if Ian was against green screen or not.
Well, he's actually being composited in from him being shot on the larger size set.
Yes.
The smaller. He's in the smaller one to make him
the smaller one. Yeah.
Yes, he's in the smaller set.
Now Ian just pulls it off right here. You just see that early, the ring just beginning to take a hold of him in this scene, and just right here, look at that. It's just like the early signs of kind of something like Gollum. Sounds like an airplane out there.
Do you know what it's like in Hollywood when the helicopters fly this low over the houses? Sorry about that.
It's okay. Stop it out there! Ugh.
Yeah, this is where the movie really takes a dark turn. We've got our first inciting incident, basically.
Of the nature of the ring, of what it's
yes.
capable of doing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've always kind of wondered how long the actual ring it takes before to have a total effect over you, or control over you, I should say, where you're possessive over it. From Gollum's case, it probably took a couple hundred years.
It depends what race you're from.
That's true. Well, and also what your situation in, because in Gollum's case, it was this immediate type of lust factor when he first gazes upon it, but
the effect of the ring is a subject of much debate, and fans have discussed it on message boards and chats for years. The extra care that Peter takes in the way these scenes are filmed, and the audience really starts to feel that drop, that heavy dropping weight of the ring, as if it has its own separate gravity, as if the darn thing has something about it that's not quite right, and it's hard to take a simple, plain-looking ring, a very boring, plain-looking band of gold. It's not stylized to look all badass with cool Sauron designs and things like that. It's just a simple thing, but it's got a sinister quality that Peter very carefully gives the audience with the visual clues and great sound editing, especially Alan Howard. I believe that's the actor who is given credit as the voice of the ring.
He passed away just recently.
I'm sad to say, yes, he did. Yeah. The great Alan Howard. Now, it also leads to speculation that Benedict Cumberbatch would be brought in as a replacement voice if Peter Jackson re-edits the films, all 6 films, and makes things more uniform.
We'll talk about Benedict Cumberbatch when we get to involvement with these films, and when we get to the Hobbit films. I mean, we can mention him here and there, but I think when we get to the Hobbit films, I think that's where our a bigger debate can be, a bigger conversation can be had.
I love that crash cut to Sauron's eye and back to Gandalf. It's brilliant.
Now, obviously the movie plays it up as if he's still very suspicious about this ring, but I think it's kind of obvious that he knows what this ring could be. Now, do you think when the eye shows up...
This is an iconic moment in this very shot where Frodo becomes the ring bearer in this very shot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. He puts that ring up in the background, and Peter keeps it out of focus. The director isn't even caring if the audience is paying attention that much, but it is a very, very important moment in Middle-earth history and in the story when, in that background, out of focus, Frodo leans over and picks that ring up.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you were saying, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, I was just going to say that I wondered if that shot when they implemented the Sauron's eye, if that was actually Gandalf seeing it from his perspective. Does that make any sense? Like if that was like a vision in his mind.
Yes. Yeah, that's the impression I got. And it's also the same impression I get when Gandalf takes the cloth wrap and puts it back over the Palantir and gets another crash cut of Sauron's eye, and then Gandalf has this look of realization dawn on his face.
Yeah. Now, they had to change the timeline here because in the book it's like 19 years, but here it's supposedly it's set up for like a couple months later, which I think that was a good choice because you would have had to done some aging with Frodo, and you didn't want to get into that situation.
That's right. But it is such a heavy compression of time, but the audience doesn't know it. The audience just knows that we're here in Barad-dûr. Imagine the point of view of non-fans, or people who have not read the books. This is their first glimpse of, this must be where the bad guys live.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the voice of Shire and Baggins, it squealed by a poor, tortured Gollum, might be something that a casual audience member might not even recognize, unless they knew the names from the books.
Yeah.
But and then Peter cross-cuts to Minas Morgul, instantly leaves Barad-dûr, and then we see the gates of Minas Morgul open and the issuance of the 9 riders.
That shot freaked me out. Another shot that just freaked me out because it's almost like as if they're coming from this place of death, of just pure evil, and that always just scared me. You know, as a little kid, I saw this when I was very very young in the theater. This
is my favorite shot where Gandalf's pipe smoke curls around the manuscripts as he's opening them up. Here in the hidden libraries of Minas Tirith, look all around in the background, guys. You'll see some really interesting little things that the art department loved making for their little underground chamber library.
I've always kind of wondered if Isildur wrote these accounts or if it was a scribe.
No, this was written in Isildur's own hand in his own first-person singular voice.
Okay. Now, I've always kind of wondered if the ring was shrinking. It looks like it shrinks right there at that moment.
Yes, it very distinctly changes size, yes. And there, the letters fade, and you can see Isildur's face reflected in the ring itself in that shot.
I remember when we did the animated movie, we talked about how the red eyes on the Ringwraiths just, that was a great little design, but here you don't see anything, and I think that's even more terrifying. Just look at this shot. You don't see anything. It could be just an empty body, and
it reminds me of the Ghost of Future Present, or Ghost of Future to Come from the Muppets version of Christmas Carol.
Oh yeah. I like this part.
Still be many miles to go.
It's amazing how far these two progress by the end, and how much maturity they gain.
Yeah, they're so childish in these early scenes, but then they become basically men in a way, wiser. Let me put it that way. And it's interesting with the hobbits because I've always kind of seen them as the young men who go to war and they come back changed. It's like it's a universal story that's been has been spread in, World War I, World War II, those, specifically World War I, I would say. The young man goes off to war, he comes back a completely different individual, like All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah.
Sean Astin, so far, he's the only member of the Fellowship that I've met. So, hopefully one of these days I can meet the other 8. Now, I remember as a kid when they came to this shot, or to the scene, I should say, my sister and I, like, oh no, one of the Ringwraiths is in there somewhere. Peter Jackson just, because of his background in horror, I think it actually helps with the scenes of intensity, just, it lends an extra edge of excitement to it because you just don't know what's going to come out of the darkness, and I think that's what kind of helped him with because of his horror background experience.
Yes, the horrors of World War I for Tolkien was particularly devastating. All of his friends died. Every single one of his buddies, his college friends and classmates, they were all dead. He was the only one who survived, and that creates survivor guilt. In some, post-traumatic stress disorder, different ways of people have to deal with that after seeing combat. And Professor Tolkien managed to get his academic life and his academic career where he wanted it to go, and he used the power of his storytelling to remind us all of some of these things that he's actually seen himself. The depictions of war throughout the War of the Ring are pretty unsparing, and some of Professor Tolkien's political sensibilities come out in certain characters' dialogue, especially Gandalf and Faramir in particular.
Would you even say Saruman as well? Or do you think he was more of a representation of the things that were going on in the world from Tolkien's point of view? I would say it would be.
Saruman, I believe, is a classic representation of a vessel of power that was led astray by the ego,
yes,
by the perils of the id.
In this case, it was Hitler.
In this case, yes. More wonderful photography from Andrew Lesney, as we see wisps of Gandalf's pipe smoke just hovering and floating in these almost, opaque little wisps that just linger around him in his previous shots. It's so fantastic. The whispered conversation takes one of my favorite chapters of the book, which we all know is called The Shadow of the Past, and to the credit of Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh, especially Ed Peter, for writing and constructing such a great adaptation, which briskly takes the audience through this very important information that Gandalf has to give the audience. This is, it's always hard for a screenwriter to do this kind of what you call really important exposition, but it is the single most exposition. It's the most important critical exposition in all 3 of the Lord of the Rings films. Mm-hmm. And the way that Ian delivers it is this intense close-ups and his whispered urgency. I remember a lot of film reviewers commenting on how Peter was able to give a big directing flourish by contrasting tight close-ups of intimate discussion and very wide vistas of mountains and wide shots of beautiful Middle Earth, and then bringing it back up real to tight, intimate shots again of characters having an important moment. It is a hallmark of what Peter did in these 3 films, that he dances back and forth between grand vision of shots and very, very, very tight close-ups. You'll see him bounce around a lot with these.
Yeah. Now, in the books, is it ever explained as to how Gollum was captured?
Yes. In the books, it's discussed in great detail.
Okay.
There's only an abbreviated bit that we learn here of Gollum being captured. The truth of the hunt for Gollum is something that Gandalf talks about for a couple of paragraphs, I believe.
In the Shadows of the Past, they had to cut out a lot of stuff in that particular chapter, and then a lot of other things in the book, because because I know in that part of the book, The Shadows of the Past, they talk about the prologue. I mean, and that's where the writers probably said, okay, we're going to use this part, and we're going to put it in the beginning, because it would make a good intro shot.
The only other film version of The Lord of the Rings that existed before Peter made his adaptation was Ralph Bakshi's.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Ralph Bakshi made excellent use of a prologue, and it allowed him to use some, unique animation techniques. As you said at the very top of this recording, Chris, it was an excellent choice to have Galadriel be the introductory voice for the audience. We get a panicked plan by Gandalf and Frodo in the middle of the night for Frodo to just leave and abandon his home and everything in the Shire. The audience doesn't know that Gandalf had been gone for 16 or 17 years.
Yeah, it's just been a couple of months, at least in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, according to the book, it was a very calculated and precise escape plan, basically, that forged him, having him sell the house and all the possessions in it, and moving into where did he move now? It was not Bree.
Buckland.
It was
Buckland.
Buckland, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And there was even a fifth Hobbit who, our original four Hobbits, we know them very well, but beyond Merry, Pippin, Sam, and Frodo, there was also his cousin Fatty Bolger.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the fifth Hobbit who was also a co-conspirator. In the book, there's a lot of secrecy and plans about, Frodo moving to Buckland, and all that stuff is completely eradicated from the film. At least we get this beautiful bit where Sean Astin's character Sam is caught eavesdropping. I just love it. It's so great.
Because I think that was originally that was actually a doll that he grabs and then just throws it onto the table.
Yeah.
Sean he's just such a better Sam than the one that we saw in 78, and I know that I remember reading in an interview that when he was preparing for the role, he was like, no, I am not doing anything that the 78 film did. I'm completely ignoring that. I'm going down my own route. I wonder if he borrowed, and I noticed in his voice there's a little bit of Bill Nighy, a bit in his voice, like that kind
I love Bill Nighy.
Yeah, a little bit of it in his English accent, but.
Now, this quick sound editing right here, where Gandalf disappears, and then we hear birds briefly in the distance, and then there's that short moment of that panicked look on Frodo's face, wondering, what are those birds doing? And then you realize, it was just a few seconds ago that Gandalf has warned you, the enemy has, spies, many spies, birds and beasts, and it's such a great collection of quick shots and quick sound editing that gives the audience the sense of urgency of how things have quickly changed in this storyline.
Now, I think a lot of fans will know this, but apparently in the distance, I don't know which shot it is, I think it might be in the wide shot, but there is a car in the distance, and for the life of me, I have not been able to spot it. Like, I don't know if it's the smoke to the far right, or if it's somewhere else. Have you heard about this, guys?
Yep, I know it, and I know it very, very well. And I even saw the distinct little green block that was moved over in the far distance in one of these shots. Mm-hmm. I see smoke in the far distance.
Yeah.
There's smoke from some farm, a farm's fireplace in the far right. But in a previous shot, I saw where it was edited out. There was a glint of a windshield in one shot, once upon a time.
Ah.
We'll never see that
right?
again.
Theatrical cut, right?
Anybody go back to any old VHS tapes of Fellowship? We'll see if we can find it.
Okay.
Yeah, seriously.
I still got my VHS tape, actually.
Do you really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't get a DVD player until, after the extended edition of Return of the King came out. So, fond memories. Now, I've heard a lot of speculation that the lady riding the horse is Arwen in this shot right here. Some have speculated that it's... I don't think it is.
No, it is not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It's a completely different elf. I've looked at this so many times, but this is only the third time we've seen elves represented. And it is so sad to me that beautiful shot of watching the elves leaving in the woods and their brief conversation about it, I'm so sad it did not survive into the theatrical cut. Because it's really beautiful, and it tells the audience about the migration of the elves being something that must be bigger to the story, but it's just being touched on marginally. But it will become bigger for the story, especially when Arwen and her choice to give her mortality to Aragorn, when that is introduced, it's just so great that the audience has some kind of context to even think about that.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite shots there was the encroaching horse's head on the right side of the screen.
Yeah.
Looking over the Shire, and a sudden ominous note from Howard Shore.
Yeah, and this is a great shot right here. Christopher Lee, Count Dooku.
Yes.
Dracula. It's the power. I remember in an interview, Christopher Lee stated that the power of Saruman really comes from his voice, and it's true. I mean, you're almost in a way kind of seduced by his voice, and his power is just coming through that. And I think Christopher Lee was a fantastic choice, and out of everybody, and I think he's the only actor to have met the professor as well. And he had been a huge advocate for years of seeing this movie made. And it finally came true. Had to wait a long time, but it finally came true for him.
It is fantastic. The best thing that any director can do is have exactly the right actors that he wants. And Peter Jackson got every actor he wanted, and these casting choices are uniformly brilliant in all these films.
I'm going to say this about the actors. I mean, this is, in my opinion, probably one of the best ensembles since the first Star Wars, and maybe even Citizen Kane. Like, everyone is just cast just perfectly. I mean, no flaws. I mean, I can't look at this film and say that person didn't work for me. I mean, everybody is just perfectly cast.
Indeed. And Christopher Lee, the Wicker Man, the original Dracula from the Hammer films, from the great British studio, and all of Christopher Lee's characters, along with Peter Cushing and the other Hammer films they all did together. We do get a crossover to Star Wars from Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee together, and they also go back to the Hammer tradition.
Yeah.
And I'm so pleased that there was so much Saruman included in Hobbit Film 1 and Hobbit Film 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is missing, however, is the Palantir and the discovery of the Palantir in the Battle of Dol Guldur, which was such a crowd-pleasing moment in the Battle of the Five Armies film. Now, we see this turn, and we suddenly realize how much peril Gandalf is in at this very moment. But it would have been clearer if the theatrical version of The Hobbit Part 3 had shown Saruman finding the Palantir at Dol Guldur and picking it up and going, oh, what's this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've always...
It would have brought us here. So this scene, it really would have.
Yeah, that's some of my problems with the Hobbit 3, because I felt like there were some pieces missing to match itself perfectly, or to line itself a lot more perfectly with Fellowship. The thing that I think Saruman is mistaking of the situation is I don't know what has turned him to believe that the free people of Middle Earth can be defeated. I don't know if he's looking at the situation saying that we are no match for the power of Sauron. So that's why in this scene it's like might as well turn while it's still good. I guess maybe.
Well, I mean, on one hand, you've got, it's possible he tried to ration it out with logic, but then on the other hand, you got to realize that Sauron is immensely more powerful, and he's probably twisted Saruman's brain into thinking wrong about the whole situation.
And this is a great shot right here.
Yeah, it's super, super cool.
There he goes. Don't worry, Saruman. You get to use the Force. You don't have to use sticks. You can just use your hand. So, and he did actually when he grabbed that one rod.
The architecture of Isengard is worth discussing, as Tolkien tells us that it was built by the Númenóreans.
Yeah.
When they had just come back to Middle Earth, the ones that were not destroyed when it went under the waves, the faithful, as they were referred to, and such an unwelcoming interior for everything that is Isengard, and such a dark and strange, creepy place.
Yeah.
And a great character, Farmer Maggot, who actually helps the hobbits as they're trying to leave the Shire in secrecy, and he's reduced to a bouncing scythe that is, only appearing above the corn husks, and then off he goes, the corn stalks.
Yeah.
So many great characters cut.
Well, Tom Bombadil. Should we? Yeah, I don't think Tom Bombadil works at least in the film adaptation. I mean, you could shoot it, but you would have to leave it for, like in this case, an extended cut. But I don't think he really pushes the story forward. And I think that's what Peter Jackson realized when he was formatting this movie. It was what is essential to the plot? What can I use? What don't I use? And then use whatever I can to make this plot work. This is actually day one, I believe. The first day of filming. I believe. Yeah, this was like the first day of filming with anybody on Lord of the Rings.
Yes, they were trying to shoot these scenes because Ian was still in Vancouver finishing up X-Men with Bryan Singer. So they did advance the schedule and shoot these things without Gandalf there. And I was there on location in this exact spot on the trail on Mount Victoria, which is a beautiful spot that cuts the city of Wellington nearly in half, from the South Bay area and the airport and Miramar, where Peter Jackson lives, and just north of Mount Vic is the downtown area. And this shot was another Ralph Bakshi shot, right here.
Didn't also that shot come from an Alan Lee painting as well, or John Howe?
Yes, it's the shape of this large tree trunk and the Nazgul right overhead. This shot right here, where you see the cowering hobbits underneath. This is an early precursor to Dominic Monaghan's Wild Things on the BBC, where Dom gets all the bugs to crawl on him because he loves bugs.
Yes. Now I've always the bugs are just reacting towards the presence of evil there. That's always that thing just kind of creeps me out. Just the
a lot of people react and go, "Oh gosh, there's a spider on him," as if that's the problem, and some fans freak out over the spider and they lose focus on which is the real threat. Might have been threatened more by the spider than the Nazgul.
This little piece of music by Howard Shore, I think, is fantastic, with the Ringwraith just appearing. It's there's just something gothic about it, and it's just something from a nightmare. Look at that! I mean, that kind of silhouette shot. It kind of something from the Blair Witch Project or something like that. I think. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is another compression of time where we don't have Fatty Balger, we don't have, them playing around in the bathtub in Buckland and moving into a fake house, and we don't have any of those things. We just cut right to, here are the Nazgul, and the only person who's going to get you across the river is, Meriadoc's quick thinking, and boom, we advance the storyline, and we completely skip all these extra characters, and even the bypass at Farmer Maggot's house, and then we really bypass the Old Forest, where the hobbits are attacked by Old Man Willow and then rescued by Bombadil, as you said. And this is why the Hobbit movies feel so different from the Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings films are an excellent, really, really excellent exercise in compression, while The Hobbit was an exercise in expanding the story into 3 films. And I'm always aware of what the writers are doing. In Fellowship of the Ring, especially, they do some really cool and very effective ways, effective techniques of compression of the storyline. Don't you think?
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. I think for the sound effect for the Ringwraiths, the scream was a really good choice. I think it was actually Fran Walsh, I believe, that contributed to the Nazgul scream. So it's just something disturbing about that scream.
It was indeed Fran Walsh.
Yes.
And they had her in the studio just thrashing her voice. And then there's that weird call. That thing you just heard, was that something like a modified humpback whale sound or something?
It sounded like an owl. I've never been able
to...
It's like an owl. Old man. I don't know if they've ever given him a name. It's trembled.
There's strange folk abroad.
Yeah.
I love this. I love the dialogue. The sass that Frodo's giving this guy.
Yeah. I just like the Bree set because when they reused it in the in Hobbit 2, there was just something about it that seemed kind of like it was a compressed type of set, like it was really, really small, and it just felt a little tight. It didn't feel as open. Like
that was director's cameo right there.
Yeah, it's
did feel a bit different.
I don't know. We'll talk. I guess we can talk about that when we get to the Hobbit films. But the sets here just feel a lot more expansive. Like you feel that ability to move.
Well, they feel more authentic.
Yeah. Now, the gentleman that's playing Mr. Butterbur, his voice. I was listening to the radio drama earlier today. Is it the same guy? Because his voice sounds very familiar. Sounds very similar, actually. Is it the same guy, Cliff?
Forgive me?
Oh,
no.
No, it's not.
Who's playing Barlaman?
Yeah, the guy who in the radio drama, because their voices sound very, very similar. The innkeeper of the Prancing Pony.
I do not have any awareness of the actor being the same as the radio drama. I certainly know that Ian Holm, our very own Bilbo, Ian Holm did play the voice of Frodo in the BBC radio adaptation.
Okay. Because I was listening to their voices, the radio drama, and they just sounded so familiar.
Indeed.
Now, I've always kind of wondered the men that were looking at them strangely. Supposedly, are we led to believe that men are also in the service of... Well, yeah, that's... What am I thinking? Yeah, because you have the Easterlings and the Haradrim who are in the service of the... Of Sauron. But I've always wondered if the men in this region were kind of in allegiance with Sauron in some way.
Bree was a crossroads of people who were coming from the south from the Greenway, which used to be called the Greenway, or the Great South Road, and that includes all the strange wild men of Dunland, the barbaric wild men of Dunland, that you'll see Saruman talking to in a future scene, and those people who did trade between the farmland areas of Bree and the villages outside of the Shire, they had agricultural trade with those barbaric wild men down there and other areas of Middle Earth that were sparsely populated, but still agricultural areas. Tolkien doesn't mention much about them, but he did say that Bree had a lot of cross-traffic from dwarves who were going crisscrossing from farther in the east and going on their way to the Blue Mountains in the west, and there was men and hobbits and some communities of hobbits who were not actual Shire folk, but they wanted to live in the villages of Bree outside. And there was also Archet. There was another town near Bree called Archet, I think. Okay. But this is the part where Peter skips the song and dance number that Frodo has in, and we go straight to this part where the power of gravity is not what's going on. It's the power of the ring that hits that finger, bam.
Yeah.
Love it. Peter, I love the crowd's reaction. It's just so great.
Yeah, I think Peter did a right thing because you needed to see the danger of the situation. Even in this type of environment, you still needed that sense of just sheer danger that's just going around. You know, if you have Frodo singing a song, you kind of miss out on that, I think.
Indeed.
This is great right here. That eye.
Do anybody realize without turning on the captions what Sauron's voice was actually saying?
I think it's, there is no life in the void, only death.
Exactly.
Yes.
There is no life in the void, only death. But it is such a powerful statement for Sauron to be making when he's making his first contact with someone who he realizes has his ring.
Yes.
And it's also very cryptic, and yet powerful statement. And nobody in the audience could hear the bloody dialogue. I never knew what it was till years later when I turned on the caption.
Okay.
And I think it's part of the storytelling. It's really impressive when you know what it is that Sauron is saying. Yeah. It's altogether creepy. But, you know, we move along at a very brisk pace in Fellowship of the Ring. And here we are already with, you know, Sean Astin saying, "Oh, I'll have you, Longshanks."
Now this...
the guy gets squished by the gate, and it's so cool. It's just so awesome.
Seeing someone die, it's awesome. This is great. Just the Ringwraiths just sliding in there. It almost gives them more of a spiritual, like almost ghost-like quality to them that you think like, are these even things human? Like they're just gliding so briskly into the tavern here. This is incredible.
It's a masterpiece of editing. This is where the editors and the director really, really had their work cut out for them, and it's so well done.
I think this was a better idea of just like them just piercing as opposed to in the 78 film. They're just clobbering away. Here you're just the piercing, and I actually thought for a moment, oh boy, they killed the hobbits. They killed the other 3 hobbits. Let's give a huge thumbs up to Viggo. I mean, Viggo, I think, is just such a talented actor, and here he is, like in his prime. Like I think he was 40 years old at this point, and Viggo, I think, is such a very underappreciated actor, even to this day. I mean, he has done so many other great films throughout his career, post Lord of the Rings, and I think people tend to kind of underlook him and his talent as an actor. I mean, if you've seen his movies with Cronenberg, I mean, you can definitely tell that, he's a very...
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a special team up. Cronenberg and Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah. Did you know who Viggo? Because I mean, he was a complete unknown at this point in time. I mean, he came onto the scene and is like, "Oh, who is this guy?" Have any of you? Did any of you see him in anything prior to Lord of the Rings?
No, not me.
No, I had been aware of him in one role that I'd read. I'd read a movie review in Rolling Stone magazine about how good he was in this one role, and I think, it involved this middle-aged woman who rediscovers love on a hippie commune or something. I'm not sure what it was, but it was a romance, and it was a little character drama. That's all it was.
Okay.
But he got special notation in the press for his performance in that film, and then before you know it, Peter realized this is the guy that's going to replace Stuart Townsend, and he, of course, left the Fellowship of the Ring after a couple of weeks of trying to shoot footage. They had a lot of problems with their original Aragorn. Stuart Townsend wouldn't do his sword fighting. He refused to do his fighting class. And all the hours and hours that he needed to put into for fight choreography, and Stuart wasn't down to do it. He's like, just let the stuntman do it. And then he left abruptly, and he was given the chance to play the vampire Lestat in The Queen of the Damned. And so he left, and he thought it would be for a better franchise. But I'm afraid it was Stuart Townsend's mistake to not have stayed and gone the distance with, the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Viggo's just such a dedicated actor to his craft. I mean, if he's going to make something authentic, I mean, he's going to push himself to do it.
Yes, he did. Viggo slept on the ground in the cold with his own sword, and he slept with his sword nightly, and he would not be parted from it ever for any reason. And he did more than just go to his fight classes and learn his choreography. He got real with this role of Aragorn. It was really wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's definitely what I would call a, the method actor. I mean, just dedicating himself to each and every role. Do you have a favorite? Which of the Cronenberg movies do you like that he's done? Eastern Promises.
Eastern Promises is wonderful. I love that. A History of Violence.
More than likely, they're going to collaborate again. I can't see them not, like, after Dangerous Method, I can't see them not doing any more together.
I missed The Road. I wanted to see that. Was it any good?
I've not seen that. I've heard great things about The Road. It was very depressing.
Here's our first reference to Silmarillion mythology in this conversation here.
And here we are with the Saruman stuff. Even just his hands, I mean, they're just creepy. Long fingernails and all that stuff.
Aren't they fantastic?
I remember getting the image on the trading cards of that pose of him right there with his hands over the trading card set. Did any of you collect the trading card?
I did not. I was given access to some of the autographed trading cards because I used to work for Ian McKellen at his website, mckellen.com. And sometimes we would ship out special prizes to contest winners, and they would be some of those special autographed Topps cards that he had signed in our office. One of my favorite shots, one of my very favorite experiences in Fellowship of the Ring, happening right here.
Oh, yeah.
With the destruction of all the orchards and the groves of all the trees around the gardens of the Circle of Isengard.
Now, I know that Tolkien, I think, or a lot of his historians kind of believe that industry was the ruin of Mother Nature in a way, because in order to make way for industry, you have to destroy the beauty of the earth. And I think that idea, if it is true at all, comes through. It really seeps through these moments at the Saruman stuff right here.
the Tower of Orthanc, I cannot fathom how it was built, why the last wave of Númenóreans used their technology and their power to build something so formidable, and it's just fascinating to me. And I still can't figure out how they got to the roof. There's no
stairs.
Or there's no way down.
Unless there's a trap door or something like that. You do hear something bang when almost like a door when Gandalf is flying up there. This is
the Watchtower of Amansul.
Yeah. Tomatoes and nice crispy bacon. That's an interesting combination, unless you're having a burger or something like that.
Ash on my tomatoes.
I never noticed this now, but apparently they're walking towards the tower. I always thought they were on horses or something like that.
They just tied their horses somewhere nearby because they weren't going to bring the horses up to the hilltop. So, however, we're at the same spot where Azog, the Defiler, has one of his scenes, and one of his minions gets eaten by the wargs.
Yeah.
It's quite funny that they chose a place of tactical error when they had, on the walkway, they could have faced the Ringwraiths one at a time, maybe two at a time, but here they're just completely surrounded.
Well, I mean, and two, these are, well, one, they don't even know what these things are. I mean, yeah, they are men, but to kind of sneak up on them would probably be dead meat before you would even do any type of harm to them. And look at this. I mean, Elijah is so great in this moment right here. Just showing the just absolute terror that is before him. Now, in the books, Frodo bravely goes up against the Witch King in the book. I don't know if in this situation the more perilous route with Frodo in the movie works better. I think they both work equally very well in their own ways.
A lot of fans prefer a more assertive Frodo, who was on horseback with the elf lord Glorfindel, trying to help him escape at the fords of Bree. But in his encounters with the Witch King, the audience needs to feel pure terror. So we get a lot more of that from our filmmaker than we would otherwise. A nice sudden late arrival by our dashing hero.
Yes, I think this was Viggo's. Yeah, this was Viggo's first day. He hadn't really had that much training in sword fighting, so it was like, okay, here you are, start swinging. Oh man, I love this. This is just incredible.
It's great, but Merry and Pippin have completely disappeared through most all of these shots, and then suddenly, they get pushed aside, and then they're absent for several minutes, and you don't know where Merry and Pippin are, because Peter has a job to do. He's trying to keep the audience focused on Frodo. And there they are. Merry and Pippin have suddenly reappeared. We don't know where they went.
Now, this look that Viggo gave to the Witch King right here, who I think is the Witch King, he gives this look as if it was something personal, like I know who you are. But I always thought that maybe that particular Ringwraith may have been the cause of his parents' death, which that could have been interesting if they had played that. But I always got that sense that there was something, that look that he gave him was something personal. Is the nature of his parents' death ever revealed? I can't remember.
In the books, yes. Frodo's parents died in a boating accident.
Oh, no. Aragorn's parents. I'm sorry.
Oh, Aragorn's parents. Forgive me. Aragorn's parents. There's some story in the appendix about Aragorn's mother, Gilraen, and how she died.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find something.
This is a great use of just model, like in the early days. I mean, this is just a great model shot right here. That I think somehow gets lost in the Hobbit, because I think Peter did a fantastic job of using practical effects, and that kind of gets lost. That's I think practical effects to some degree, with the exception of maybe Christopher Nolan, I think it's kind of gotten lost in the form of in filmmaking. My sister thought that when Gandalf caught the moth with his hands, she thought that he was going to eat it. She's like, well, I mean, he's probably starving. I mean, what else could he eat?
The best shot, my favorite shot in the film, when the camera goes all the way from the top of Orthanc right down to the anvil and hammers on that sword.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Down in the pits. That's just one of my very favorite shots.
This is great right here.
Christopher Lee looking quite pleased.
I love the Uruk-hai helmets. We just saw one really briefly, but...
It's so funny, though, that a character who's so obsessed with his pure white appearance would associate himself with such filth, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Funny, yes.
This is great. I think this is probably like one of my favorite bad guys in the entire trilogy. There's just something about Lurtz that's so cool. There's something disgusting about that right there. Ugh. But look at this. My gosh. I mean, all that slime just being birthed. Now, what did they do to create these orcs? I mean, were they just there in the earth waiting to be hatched?
No, they were half orc, half elf.
Well, there's a lot of contention about how orcs were bred, and the breeding process we see in the films could very well be something unique for Saruman's dark power. There was originally the elves were captured and corrupted by Morgoth many thousands of years earlier, and were corrupted and tortured and turned into orcs. But since then, that kind of left the question open. Oh, well, if elves were immortal, wouldn't all the orcs that were derived after, they also be immortal as well?
I think that's
I
think that's the case right there in terms of their lives, because they're probably why there's so many of them. The orcs, that's why they've lived for so long, and because they share the elf blood in them.
There's some dialogue in Tolkien's books. None of it is present in Peter's films. That suggests that some of the orcs have been around for a long time, and they say, "Oh, remember the good old days before?" And it makes you wonder what they're talking about. And here is where Glorfindel is replaced by Arwen.
Liv Tyler's such a beautiful woman. She's so beautiful.
Indeed, very much so. And we see her in her natural power as she would appear in Valinor. And this is a moment that's replicated in The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, when Tauriel's character attempts healing.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I got a lot of issues with this. I'm just so taken by how beautiful that she is. I mean, I think this was like the first time I really noticed how beauty women are. I'm 10 years old at this point, and I'm just like, my gosh, I've never seen such a beautiful woman in my life. Wow. And what I like about the fact that they admitted Glorfindel, I think is because they wanted to try to find a way to expand on the Arwen character, who plays a very essential role in Aragorn accepting his, or becoming the king. I think it was a good sacrifice on the writer's part to get rid of Glorfindel and to place her.
Yes.
Because it helps expand the character and her relationship.
Indeed. And it it's beautifully played. Everything that Liv Tyler does with the character, I really love. I really love it a lot. And she is perfectly cast. And it's a tremendous importance to understand Aragorn's motivation. And his motivation through these 3 films is very, very much motivated by her. And the strength of their connection should be seen early and often. So yes, I agree with you. It's good to have her here for the film. But like Tom Bombadil, it's always Glorfindel who always gets the boot. Because when Bakshi made his version, he replaced Glorfindel with Legolas.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great chase right here. This is a great chase right here.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's almost like a car chase, except you don't have the cars. And here comes this great wide shot right here with the here it is. Just look at the formation of the Ringwraiths. I mean, it's almost V-shaped.
Indeed.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic right here. All she had to do was just whisper in the horse's ear, and it just took off on got some extra energy. Boost of energy.
Norolin.
Yeah,
Norolin is what you say to a horse. It means run faster.
Run faster. And it manages to do that. This is... Now, I think the idea of having her there instead of like Frodo going up against the Ringwraith, because in the book it's Frodo by himself. I think in the book, I think that's one of my probably a little bit of a criticism with the book is because you have this wounded Frodo, and I think here it just shows you how close he is to death's door, and to kind of have that extra support to help him like survive a little longer and to fight, or to help to protect him. I think it kind of helps a little bit right here instead of him going up against the Ringwraiths by himself.
Yes, I get that. This is a stunning moment in the film. Everyone loves it.
Oh yeah,
it's a great set piece. And I'm very fond of the horses appearing just as they did in Bakshi's animated film. The horses appear in the foam of the water. Professor Tolkien gives us such a great visual. No filmmaker could ever leave that out.
No, there's some really great paintings on that moment when the horses are the water horses are trampled the Ringwraith. There's some really good artwork out there.
Now, am I correct in recalling that the horses were actually a little improvisational input from Gandalf?
Yes, Gandalf. I think that's something Gandalf admitted to, actually.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a moment where we should have a metaphysical conversation about exactly what she says. What grace is given me, let it pass to him.
Yeah, it always odd in the film, but yeah.
Is it clear to everyone, and maybe not, that this is the moment when she gives her grace to leave the shores of Middle Earth? She gives it to Frodo at that moment and spares his life. I think there might be the suggestion of that. Because ultimately, she decides not to go, and instead of her going, Frodo gets a place on the last ship. He gets her place.
That's true. Yeah, I had not thought about that.
I also think that it's very powerful to see Liv Tyler do this, and it might be diminished a little bit when you see it repeated as a visual motif. It's repeated in the Hobbit films, and that's something that perhaps Peter Jackson was guilty of, was repetition of some visual motifs that were so familiar in Lord of the Rings, he couldn't resist himself and put them in the Hobbit left and right.
Yeah, that's some of the places that annoyed me the most is when he tried to copy something that he did so well the first time, and it just didn't fit. It's a really fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, this is fascinating, and the only direct reference to the Lord of the Ring as Sauron.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's always, and I think actually in the movies they always refer to the title of each film, because Elrond says Fellowship of the Ring. Two Towers, I think, is stated by in Two Towers by Saruman, and then Gandalf says the title Return of the King. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
No Unexpected Journey, or is there? I don't know. We'll find out.
That wasn't real dialogue, and that didn't happen.
When I finally saw him again, I was like, "Oh yeah, Agent Smith. How you doing? Not corrupting any computers or anything like that. Programs."
These shots of Rivendell look particularly good on the Blu-ray.
It just looks like a painting. It's so beautiful to look at. It's these type of moments that make you believe in the world. I mean, you know, good job with The Hobbit, the 3D stuff, or the visual effects, but there's just something about this particular Rivendell that really stands out from the first Hobbit movie.
Indeed. This version of Rivendell looks a lot more overgrown, and it doesn't look anywhere as neatly swept or neatly manicured as it does in The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be deliberate on the part of the filmmakers, and perhaps that might be something that would only benefit the viewer if they actually saw the 6 films in chronological order of the story. And then you'd notice, oh, this Rivendell looks different from the shiny, well-swept and gardened. This place looks like it's just really fading, or perhaps... And that is... I'd like to think that the filmmakers are being deliberate, and they want to make it look faded, as if the power of the elves is actually waning at this time. They are leaving for the farther shores of the West. And the love and connection between Frodo and Bilbo is perfectly presented here. And the focus on the Red Book, which is actually the conceit of the whole 6-film structure, is that bloody book. That is the conceit of all 6 films, that these 2 characters seated here right now are together chronicling the Red Book of Westmarch.
Yeah. In a weird way, kind of thinking about it now, it's almost like a, maybe not in this moment, but I think maybe when he gives Sting, it's almost like he's passing on the baton of the next Baggins who will have to go through this journey. This is a great shot. Look at the water just coming down there, the waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also tell that this is film. I mean, this is actual film stock. You just look when you look at The Hobbit, it's a higher, well, one, it's a higher frame rate, but you can tell it's digital cameras as well. And this is just beautiful use of the film.
It's very filmic. It's very film-like. That's what we love in our films. And the textures of light and photography. Thank you, Andrew Lesney, up and down. I can't say thank you enough. I do have to admit I prefer the standard 24 frames per second than I do the high frame rate. I do.
Same here. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why Peter went down that route. I still don't understand why he went down that route.
Well, there's lots of toys in the toy box, and all the kids want to play with the newest gadgets and newest toys. That's how, I know what I'm like when someone hands me some new technology. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand that. Yeah. But the look of Middle Earth I think does benefit from looking like this.
Yeah. Instead of when Elrond first meets Frodo, he should have just said, "Welcome, Mr. Baggins. We've missed you." Where's Neo? No, he did.
Look closely in any of these shots and tell me if you see Vilya, which is the ring, the elven ring, one of 3, that Elrond has, which was bequeathed to him from Gil-galad, who had it in the earliest shot in the prologue. I also urge you guys to look and see if you ever see the Ring of Fire, Narya, on Gandalf's fingers. You will not. I don't think you actually see the Ring of Fire on Gandalf until the coronation scene in The Return of the King.
Sean Bean, you're alive!
Hello! Hello, Ed Stark.
You have your
Will
head
Turner.
on. You have
Hello,
your
Will
head.
Turner.
And,
now, doesn't that look like Gimli's father standing behind him? Who was the white bearded guy? That might have been his father glowing behind him.
I didn't get a good look at them, at the other dwarves.
I've seen this so many times that I always keep my eye trained on background things.
Yeah, I try to do that too.
But I know I missed.
I think this scene is essential in terms of kind of establishing how Elrond views the world of men, and that he's lost faith in it because of what Isildur did all those years ago. Because here you had a man who was the leader of men. I mean, he was the leader of the King of Gondor at the time, and then even with absolute power, he just saw a weakness, or at least Isildur was an example of that. Now, this, I think, was actually originally a part of the prologue, but then I think they moved it to this scene right here.
Yes, you're right, and I'm really glad they did move it, because it's much more effective here.
Yes.
And it is important to learn why there are racial tensions between different people, and also because Isildur's choice would affect everyone globally.
Yes.
By that one mistake. And that, keeping with Tolkien's Catholicism, there is a spirit to that story of how a very small act, a very small choice, can change the destiny of all mankind.
Yeah.
Which is something you see with the forbidden fruit and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It is by one small choice, one mistake, that everyone else's destiny is suddenly shifted. And that's what Elrond was trying to explain, the import of that.
Now, I knew who Sean Bean was when I saw him in here, and the bad guy from James Bond.
Yes.
GoldenEye. It's such a different role, I think, from things that he had done before previously, because he was playing a man who was on a mission, I think, wanted to please his father, but I think also just burdened by the warfare issues that are going on in his home. And I think Sean Bean brought those qualities, very, very well.
It does. It's particularly nice to see the extended version of An Unexpected Journey where Bilbo first encounters these broken pieces of the sword.
I was very sad that they cut that out from the theatrical version, because that was because they showed that in the trailer, the very first trailer that came up with The Hobbit.
There's a reference to Sean Bean's previous TV show, Still Sharp, where I believe he plays a detective. I never saw that show, but I think he was a detective named Sharp. That was his last name.
Yeah.
And so, he makes this. There's a slight joke, an in-joke, I think, for Sean Bean fans.
Well, maybe he'll survive. Maybe this extended edition we'll see him survive, and then maybe he'll go into the other 3 films. Maybe. We'll see what happens. Now, what I like about what Viggo brings to this role, which I don't think was in the book, but Viggo brings, he plays Aragorn in a way that shows a man that has so many choices to make. He's weighed by this tremendous burden of whether or not to take up the sword of his fathers and embraces his true destiny to become the king. And I think Viggo brings that aspect very well, because Aragorn in the book is pretty straightforward, and I think there is some choices that he has some difficulty making choices, but I don't think it's as well shown as it is here.
Yeah, in the book, by the Battle of Helm's Deep, he's pretty established in who he's going to be.
Yes. It's not until basically Return of the King, when Elrond gives him the sword, that he knows what he has to become. Especially that great line when he says to him, "Become what you were born to be."
Indeed.
Beautiful piece of jewelry, by the way.
It is stunning. I love all the photography. In that previous shot where Aragorn had replaced the sword back onto its place, and Arwen was standing behind him asking him, "Well, why do you fear the past?" And there's the way that shot is framed, it looks like Sauron in the background painting is standing right over Aragorn, right over his head, and wielding a weapon right over, as if the threat of that past is still over Aragorn and in his mind.
That's a good point. I just noticed that now.
I feel like it's pictorially represented for us to pick up on that, I think. The music, the choice of music, and the choice of shots is just stunning. It's just a perfect moment.
This scene right here.
Yeah, and the audience is starting to realize for the first time that there's more at stake for these two.
Yeah.
But Peter keeps it brief. And boom, we're on to the next thing.
I can't believe we're almost done. Wow.
With the first half.
Yeah, the first half. Wow. It's been funny, like in consecutive viewings. Every time I've watched it, the movie seems to go by faster and faster every time I watch it. It's like, wow. By the time we start the movie, it's like, wow, it's already almost over. At least the first part. So now this is the part in the book that they really had a hard time writing. The Council of Elrond, because there is so much exposition in that part of the book.
Way much exposition. And the story comes to a standstill while everybody talks all day long.
Yeah. I mean, there's all this in the book, it's all this politics. I mean, apparently servants of Sauron was visiting the dwarves. I think even the elves. And it was a part that I think even the filmmakers knew, like, we have to condense this part. This is just way too much. And I think they made the wise choice of, like, okay, what do we need to do? We need to form the Fellowship. We need to establish what needs to happen to the ring. What is going to happen to the ring? And my sister and I have always mocked this scene because it gives elves headaches. The black speech.
Yes. The captioning says that Gandalf speaks in black speech without the captions actually saying the familiar ring verse. And then the caption says the ring voice replies in black speech.
But look at this. I mean, Boromir is just not convinced. I mean, he believes that the ring can be used for, much greater purposes, but he's so blinded by his current situation in Gondor. Here you are. You get the little trumpet there, the really Gondorian theme.
Yeah, there's so much backstory to what Boromir's saying that's just not revealed to us until I think the third film.
I would say the second film, because the extended cut of the second film, because you see.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Which I'm excited to get to that part, which I love that little scene. Now, how old was Orlando at this? Was he like 20 years old?
I think he was 19 when he was first cast.
My gosh, wow.
Yes. I think I'd have to look that up. So this jockeying for position between Boromir and Aragorn is exacerbated by Legolas being rather blunt and saying, you better back it up, boy. You owe him your allegiance,
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation is something that Aragorn is obviously uncomfortable with. But the best thing that you'd learn about the filmmaker's technique is to watch the appendices and watch the little bit that they explain where they had 6 channels of cameras and all the editing choices that Peter did.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to edit this particular Council of Elrond together from all those shots.
Yeah, he had like 5, 6 cameras going on at the same time, and then
6 cameras, yes.
He had to choose between close-up shots. He had to choose between wide shots. That's a really cool bonus feature on the DVD.
Yeah, you do remember that, don't you? Wasn't it great?
Oh,
I learned
that was
a lot
great.
about editing. Yes.
Yeah. I ate up the bonus features as a kid. I was always just amazed at that stuff.
Again, I think a credit to the filmmakers for making the ring a character, an active character in the scene itself.
Yeah. Would the ring be considered a screenplay-wise a MacGuffin? Like, is that...
Oh yeah, yeah. If you want to, if you need to speak about your films in those terms, and sometimes I think those are somewhat reductive terms, but yes, if you have to have, a quest to get everyone together and have a reason for everyone to do this thing, then the One Ring is a MacGuffin. However, on Tolkien's part, I'd say, it's such a well thought out thing, and it's such a real interesting piece of history about Sauron and Celebrimbor's friendship when Sauron appeared in fair form, as Lucifer would do in the Old Testament, and he would appear in fair form and try to goose people into doing ridiculous things that would be, real problems for them. And Sauron tricked Celebrimbor into making magic rings, and then secretly made a separate ring to control all of the power of the other races. That it is a MacGuffin, but it's also a really fascinating and metaphysically rich MacGuffin.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
It's also the first big Horcrux. You're looking at it.
Yeah.
Everything that J.K. Rowling dreamt up about how you would put a piece of your soul inside an object that is outside of you. Well, here's your Horcrux right here, the One Ring.
There you go.
Is there anything new under the sun? Maybe that look on Gandalf's face. That look on Gandalf's face is new under the sun, and it's one of my favorite shots in the whole wide world.
Because I think that was something. It just shows you that I think he really wanted to prevent Frodo from having to take this situation, to prevent him from not having to take up this burden, and now he's volunteering. I like this whole scene right here, them all volunteering.
I can't believe Frodo just said that in spite of himself. And he's got that look on his face like, oh, sugar, did I just say this out loud?
Yeah.
But Frodo is here to be changed and burdened deep down into his core. He's already wounded from that Morgul blade that barely survived. And the fact that he'd be willing to take this burden all the way, it's just an incredibly, incredibly brave and foolish thing for a very naive hobbit to say and do.
Yeah. I just think he is. I think honestly, each of these films has its own central hero, and I think in this particular film, Frodo is the hero of this movie. I mean, yeah, he's the hero throughout the whole trilogy, but I think each one has its own essential hero. And I'll be happy to explain the other ones in the other two. But in this one, you have Frodo realizing what he has to do, what he has to become.
The great call to action from the hero's journey.
Yeah.
The call to go beyond yourself.
Great fellowship shot. I love that shot.
Yeah. It's the best. Great.
Yes.
Where are we going?
To the bathroom, everybody.
The bathroom, everyone. It's time for a quick intermission.
Yes, intermission, everybody. And 3, 2, 1, hit play. And we're off on the second part on Fellowship of the Ring. So, and if you're joining us, listeners, congratulations. This is a
Making
very
it
long...
to halfway.
Yeah. And I'm sure many of you have taken your bathroom breaks at this point.
This is the grave stone, the grave marker for Aragorn's mother, Gilraen. She brought a very young child, Aragorn. She brought him here to Rivendell for protection, obviously. And then she believed that Elrond and the elves would be the best place to teach him the ways of the world. And then she left. She went to live with her own people in other parts of Eriador, the lands to the south of the Shire. And only a couple of times did Aragorn go back to his, hometown, so to speak, to go back and visit his mother. I don't know. I believe she died in her other township, but perhaps in this film universe, after she died, Aragorn decided that she should be buried in Rivendell.
Hmm. The Sting, yeah, I've always loved the Sting sword. I've just wanted to get my hands on one. I just haven't gotten around to it. They made some really the replicas for like the weapons and all that stuff. They're just fascinating to look at.
Yeah, they're really cool, especially the Noble collection.
Oh yeah. Do you have any of the swords?
No, I don't, but most of my friends do.
Ah. Ben, you got a Sting, right?
Yeah, it was a cheaper version with just cheaply painted to look like it, but from a distance it looks pretty good still.
Okay.
Here comes a freak out moment that makes everyone spill their popcorn.
Now I read somewhere that was actually a puppet, and they took and it was like, and Peter said it like took them the creators a couple months just to make it, just for half a second, and
Yep, they made this crazy puppet, and I've seen pictures of it with the guys in the workshop holding it. It is very freaky looking.
I actually seen photos of Ian Holmes just giving the the look, giving his natural look and kind of doing that grin where it's that frightening look, but they had to change a lot. And this is, I think, right here where Bilbo kind of realizes that the true weight of the situation that I don't think he realized before.
The look on her face will not be informed to us, the audience, until later. But that really sad and rather that really dejected and unhappy look on her face is something because of a previous conversation of Aragorn, quote unquote, breaking up with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a funny way of putting it.
We'll get to that though later. We'll get a flashback of that and we'll see why Arwen has that strange look on her countenance.
Yeah. That's the great thing about the Arwen stuff is that, all that stuff, like the scene that we just mentioned, I think was supposed to be in Fellowship, but then they had to hey, here's a way for us to expand the Arwen role. Let's put this in Two Towers. So.
That heartbroken,
oh my god,
teary-eyed look in her face.
Oh man.
That's really tough. No one understands exactly why she looked that way, but there's trouble in paradise right there with those two birds.
Oh, yeah.
Another moment where we get ready for our big hero shot of the Fellowship.
Oh yeah, I love the music, the Fellowship theme. It's my favorite piece of music from the entire trilogy. Are we watching The Sound of Music? The ending of The Sound of Music? This is
inspired by that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. This is great. This is great right here. Now, I think the Hobbits and Gimli were shot on a separate stage, and then all the tall guys were shot on other stages.
Remember what a triumphant moment seeing that in the trailer, in the early trailer before we saw Fellowship of the Ring. We saw that hero shot of the 9 characters right there, and it was so mind-blowing. Everyone just loved it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And what was it again? That trailer that you just mentioned, I think that little piece of footage also revealed when the release dates of the other two, or all 3 of them, I think.
Yes.
Now you said you saw the film or an early bit of footage at the Cannes Film Festival, right? That was the first time that anybody had seen anything, right?
Yes, that's true. But I did not go to Cannes.
Oh, okay.
I did see that footage when everyone had the chance to see it on the internet, and or did I wait? I thought I got a chance to see it somewhere a few weeks after it was shown at the Cannes Film Festival, and New Line Cinema invited us to see that footage as a sneak peek, and I think we did an early write-up about it.
Okay.
Boy, that was exciting. But it's nothing. It's just a wisp of cloud.
It's all a memory now.
This is a part where nobody else knows the dialogue that Legolas says, Crebain from Dunland. And only hardcore book fans would know those exact words. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I like the storm, the location. This is a really nice location right here. It even shows that even nature was against them. Like just the second part right here that we're going to be watching. Especially it just shows you even nature itself is against the Fellowship. I mean, here you got creatures of the sky, and in the next part, the environment basically would now become an enemy against them. The mountains, the snow, and all that stuff.
Everything.
Yeah.
We just bumped through a big chapter in the book called The Ring Goes South, and bam, here we are up on the pass of Carthras, which I never knew how to pronounce correctly until the movies came out.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And this ring is huge. That one that was in that shot right there, it's a very, very large, oversized. It's not the one he's holding now.
No. It was like the size of a hand, right?
Yeah. It was amazing.
Here you just begin to see the pity that Boromir is having towards the ring, and it's of course the ring taking control of him.
Now, a little bit of trivia here. I believe when Boromir turns and throws his shield around his shoulder, if you pause it just for a moment, you can see a reflection of the cameraman in his shield.
Oh,
I've never seen that one. Technically, it almost looks like that was the moment when Boromir was a ring bearer. He wasn't, though.
Okay, I think I. Well, I liked how Aragorn has his hand on his sword. Like he was prepared to almost kill him.
Yeah, there would have been bloodshed right there in that moment.
Yeah. Just to save the quest. And
so, how about the way these bigatures look compared to the all-digital landscapes of The Hobbit?
Amazing.
Peter has such a great time with his bigatures department and getting the camera to move around the caverns under Isengard, and it's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what happened. I wonder why they never used it in the Hobbit movies. I do think there was a time.
Well,
issue.
I mean, in some cases, it saves time because you don't have to hire all the compositors and matte painters to the same extent. I mean, you do, but it's a simpler process. There's less steps involved when you have the fully digital environment.
But it just kind of lose itself. I think that's the problem. This is great right here. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. I was just going to say, there's a lot of traditional camera work you see here in the original trilogy that is kind of just thrown out the window when it comes to The Hobbit. The character movement is all very, very stylized and CG oriented because of that, because of the ability to just move around anywhere in the environment. And so that's where the big difference shows up.
This is amazing right here. Just Christopher Lee speaking in Elvish. I think it's Elvish, and then he's dark.
Yeah. It is a fantastic shot. And still some of my favorite photography and very clever camera movements. And here comes the 24 inches of snow that Boston just got a little while ago, all at once. Now, notice the captions usually throughout the entire film, our captions would say, someone chants in Elvish or speaking in Elvish.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, I've just discovered that Saruman was speaking in Quenya. And it also said Gandalf chants in Sindarin.
Mm.
So it's the first time that the captions have made the distinction between the two Elvish languages, Quenya and Sindarin.
Again, this is just emphasizing what I said earlier, that the weather, the environment is its own trouble. Oh, well, now here's something here that I was kind of sad that did not make it into Hobbit 3 was something mentioning the Balrog, or the dwarves considering going to Moria, because I think this, because you see this fear, because it's obviously about the Balrog, but if they had brought that aspect into Hobbit 3, you can kind of understand his fear here, maybe. Does that make any sense?
It does make sense. I understand where you're going. What we know nothing about why Gandalf would be so reluctant to re-enter Moria. But when the when the reader is reading the Fellowship of the Ring for the first time, they really don't know why Gandalf was so unwilling.
Well, in the book, he was more not eager, but he was more go. He was more more positive toward, or so-called positive towards the idea of going to Moria because there was no other choice. Here, it's like, nah, I really have no desire to go to Moria. In here. So he's up against the crowd in the books, I believe. Specifically Aragorn. Here, Gandalf, I think, is giving Frodo a bit of essential wisdom that you must rely upon yourself now for this burden. People, as he's just said, the evil will be drawn to you from inside the Fellowship, specifically Boromir. So basically, he's in a much more difficult environment now with because the Fellowship, and I think in some way that little bit of dialogue between Frodo and Gandalf kind of showed that even the Fellowship was at risk, more so.
Indeed, Gandalf's prescience is an always interesting thing. Even at the very end of Battle of the Five Armies, Gandalf says out loud, "I know you've got a magic ring." And Bilbo gives a little lie about it, a little fib about it, saying, no, And then he says, yes, well, and he admits that there's, as if Gandalf had known from the very, very beginning, from in the instant that they emerged from the Goblin tunnels is that Gandalf seems to have known what Bilbo had on his person in some way. And his foresight is sometimes very specific. Sometimes the bearers of the 3 Elven Rings are given the gift of foresight.
I didn't know that.
And they do. And they sometimes literally talk to other characters in those terms, especially in the books. You know, some character will say, "A foresight is upon me." I think I've read Gandalf, say those exact words.
It is interesting. Yeah, this is a great part. Maybe try to ram his head to see what that would do.
I know what it's like when you're so grumpy and someone keeps asking you stupid questions. I know exactly.
He's like the pesky 8-year-old who just doesn't want to shut up.
I know exactly what that's like. And I try not to be condescending when I respond, but I'm telling you.
Yeah. You got to prepare yourself when you become a father, and it's like when you have your little kids asking you all these questions, like, "Daddy, why is this that way?" Or, "Dad, what are you gonna do?" It's like, "Shut up and stop asking me questions." So.
Now,
fantasy. Now it's interesting looking back at this. And looking back at the past 30 years, I want to say 30 years, maybe even 60 years of what fantasy films were. I mean, the pinnacle of what a fantasy film was probably Disney. The animated Disney movies.
Yes.
But then you look at maybe 70s cinema take on fantasy, and it was just kind of blah. I mean, I've seen some fantasy films from the 70s and maybe even 80s, and they were just bad. I mean, the only ones that come to mind that were really good were The Princess Bride, which that's a comedy. But
there are a few hidden gems of fantasy works from the 80s. A lot of them were complete cheese fest. Really cheesy cheese fest. Like, The Beastmaster, for example. But, some of them were even cheesier than cheese, and we knew how bad they were going in. Like the Sword and the Sorcerer, for example, which was a really lame knockoff of Conan the Barbarian. But you did have some movies that stood out, like Conan the Barbarian, the first one, and certainly John Borman's Excalibur, which was a very fine, excellent version of the Arthurian legend. But and then there was the rare, amazing film like Dragon Slayer, which was really, really top notch.
Yeah. But
you're right, most of them on a pass-fail test, the fantasy films from the 80s. Well, gosh, we could do a whole other podcast on that.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
Right now, the situation.
We do have here. We noticed that the Watcher in the Water grabs Frodo first.
Yeah, because it's drawn to the ring.
Specifically in the book, and it happens in the movie too, and that's because of the ring.
Yeah. There's almost this music that's used here. It almost sounds something like from Jaws. Something Jaws-like quality about it.
It does.
Because whenever you have a creature, well, in the book, you don't even see the creature. You just see it's just described as tentacles and all that stuff, just reaching for Frodo. That was freaky. The mouth just emerging from just coming outward like it was hidden inside its own flesh.
Yeah, really gross. But of course, Peter's affectation for monsters.
This is fantastic.
Another shot borrowed from Bakshi is the camera will go from outside to inside, and as the Fellowship runs into the foreground and into the darkness, behind them the tentacles have pulled the door shut. However, in Bakshi's film, the door just simply slams with a big slam, and it's all done. We get thunderous, cave-in experience here. And then we get the best parts of the extended version of Fellowship, include some really juicy, good details about the history of dwarves and their economy and their lives in Moria before everything went messy.
Yeah. My dad really likes the dwarven culture, and that's what he was very excited when they did the Hobbit movies, just to kind of explore more of that world, the Dwarven world and seeing more of it, because you only got a little glimpse of it here in Fellowship.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Another great shot using the bigatures right here.
Oh yeah. What's even more amazing about these bigatures is that they spend so much time just building those little things just for only a couple of seconds in the film and never to be used again.
Yeah, but it pays off.
Oh, it
really
pays
does.
off. Yeah, the work it's worth it.
Some of my favorite dialogue when Gandalf says there are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of language is so Tolkien. The deep places of the world. It is very, very Nordic, very Scandinavian. Those early fairy stories that Tolkien read when he was a boy, just a small child, and he was so energized and wanted to create his own stories and his own dragons when he was very, very young.
I always had problems with this scene. I mean, it's a great scene, mind you, but wouldn't you want to stay in complete darkness and not let the enemy know? If you did something like that, wouldn't that alert the enemy? Maybe.
Well, it does seem almost counterintuitive, because just a few seconds before, Gandalf said, "Let us hope that our presence goes unnoticed." And then a few minutes later, he says, "Let's risk a little more light." But it's film. It's got to be visually told.
Yeah.
The filmmakers went to great lengths to make it look like, the orcs really ravaged the tombs, and they pulled out books and journals and bodies and things, and you can see busted gateways into crypts that should have been interred and left alone in peace. And I remember Daniel Falconer and some of the other team from Weta who work for Richard Taylor, explaining all the details they put into all these background shots. And the audience who sees it for the first time, they just don't see all the tons of detail that are there.
I was going to say that this scene right here, I actually shot this little scene as a kid. I actually used all my Lord of the Rings action figures, and I actually shot this little scene right here using my camera. I actually built my own little Moria set using some bricks and all that stuff.
Wow.
When I was a little kid, my sister and I were actually planning on doing our own version of Lord of the Rings using the action figures, but we just never got around to it. It was a little bit too expensive, but oh yeah, we got to talk about this.
Here's Gollum 1.0.
Yeah. Some people have been speculating as to whether or not they're going to replace this Gollum shot with the Andy Serkis. It looks so different. He looks a lot more, again, like kind of frog-like in his face. Just the texture.
I think it's just his eyes are not as blue. I really think that's the only difference. From what I see of the background movement of Gollum's face, he looks rather Gollum-like, but they didn't want to give away too much. They didn't have the software perfected. And the eyes are definitely a different color. There's a profound philosophical wisdom that the author, Tolkien, is providing with this dialogue here. Yeah. Many that die deserve life. Many who live deserve death. Can you give it to them, Frodo? It's very powerful.
Yeah.
And at play, again, Gollum's part that he might play in the future, that also gives us a sense of Gandalf's foresight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And you just see right here Frodo just not wishing that none of this had ever happened, just saddened by that, but Gandalf just reassures him that,
this major dialogue bit is reiterated when the ghost of Gandalf is floating over Frodo at the end at the breaking of the Fellowship.
Yes, yes.
This exact dialogue is repeated, and it also became a very strong post 9/11 sentiment that hit America at the time, and Americans were just struggling with the horror of what had just happened a couple of months before this film came out. Mm-hmm. And New Line released a special poster showing these two characters, Gandalf and Frodo, seated and having that exact word-for-word conversation, which was printed on the poster as a full paragraph of text. And it is a very strong post-9/11 sentiment that, I wish this had never happened. And Gandalf says, so do all who live to see such times. But that's not for them to decide. And I think it was a moment when Peter Jackson didn't realize it. He couldn't have realized it. But there's something about the resonance of the story that hit America and hit the world and became part of the cultural zeitgeist at the time. That everyone was profoundly affected by this. The idea of being up against a faceless evil that could strike anywhere at any time, and how bravery has to be called upon to match against evil times.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it, because I think this movie did that. Audiences were able to latch on to this, especially after 9/11.
Yes,
to kind of have this escapism, but still at the same time still reminding us of the problems that are going on within the world. That I think was even relevant to what Tolkien was going through at the time when he was writing all this stuff as well. So, because this was after World War I. We were just on the verge of another World War. So, I think it did apply to that sentiment. Does apply to the situation.
And now we see our dear friend Balin, who is so beautifully portrayed by Ken Stott in the 3 Hobbit films. And that is Adam Brown's character, Ori.
That we know of, right? Or is it officially
no, it's confirmed by the filmmakers. That's and Adam Brown himself. And Gandalf just pushed Adam Brown's hand away. That is Ori, our friend.
Poor Ori. Looks like he got an arrow to the chest.
To the knee. No, just kidding. Sorry.
Looks like his slingshot didn't do much work for him.
It did not. But technically, it is funny that of all the 13 dwarves, Adam Brown claims, somewhat playfully, that he's the only one who appears in the Elotiar trilogy. Except for a questionable shot on the Council of Elrond, where I think I see an older, bearded glowing behind Gimli, but that's still questionable. Go ahead, please. Someone tell me why this stupid thing is happening right now.
I know. This is one of those moments where we go like, no, don't, whatever you do, don't twist the arrow. Don't twist the arrow, or else the head's gonna fall into the...
Exactly.
Now, did any of you ever play the Third Age, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, the RPG game?
No, I did not.
Okay,
no, but I knew the rule set. I thought it was really cool.
You find out what actually happens to the skeleton. I won't say what happens. You actually find out where it lands.
First of all, if a dead body is sitting there and it's dead for many, 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 many years, decades, where it's even decomposed that much, would it not, on its own accord, have slumped down or fallen down and still, instead of just sitting upright on the edge of the well?
Yeah. Well, and even then, what's most fascinating is that surely things have just, out of time and decay, fallen of their own accord. And why is that such a cause for rallying the troops?
Exactly. The other side of that too.
I bet they hadn't heard anything in years, and so to hear something like that is like a cause of massive retaliation. Like, what's in here?
Why? I mean, when things are potentially falling all the time, everything's decaying, ropes are rotting. Why not have something just drop? Why not send a scout first?
I can't believe those old wooden doors are capable of keeping a cave troll back.
Well,
and again,
I remember when I saw this in the theaters, just what was behind those doors, I mean, just creeped me out. And then just hearing the noise, them screaming, and then them hacking through the door. I love that twirl that Boromir does with the sword. And they're just piercing.
We have a completely different blue glow for Sting this time than we do in The Hobbit. Or should I say, when watching The Hobbit, we've got a completely different blue glow than the... Because this was the first one.
This is great. The actions feel like a little bit like Braveheart, because in Braveheart you had this sense of just fighting for your own survival, and I think to some degree I think that's Peter Jackson kind of plays up that element of just fighting for your own survival. It just you're just surrounded by all these monsters and you're just fighting.
Well, yeah, it's a lot less choreographed.
But it's great action. It's great crowd action, I think.
Yeah, it's always great to have close quarters fight scenes. They're really cool. And they're fun to shoot.
This was a great level in the video game, by the way, the Two Towers video game. Did any of you ever play that?
No, I only played the Lego version.
Yeah, there you go.
Cliff, did you play the video game, the Two Towers?
No, I did not.
You guys are missing out on two great games, the Two Towers and the Return of the King. Great video games.
I played a lot of War in the North, which I enjoyed.
Now, if you look right there, there's that one orc that's to the side, and now he's finally reacting when he's moving towards Gimli after he stands up.
Lots of details to see as we rewatch this scene for the 400th time.
Yeah.
But this is where people start to say, "Oh no, you shouldn't have CGI Legolas, climbing on top of creature X, Y, or Z, whether it's a troll or a horse or an oliphant or whatever." I don't mind. I think it's always kind of cool. It ends up becoming a visual trademark in our visual understanding of Legolas. And he's always going to end up becoming digital Legolas to climb on top of somebody.
Yeah. And it also just kind of shows that, hey, this good-looking guy, he can do all these really cool athletic things, So.
Yes. And how many shots does it take to bring this troll down? Quite a few.
It only took one in the mouth, but this just, I remember in the theater, everyone just screamed at this moment when the troll just showed up.
Yes, there's a few of those. Now, the extended sequence includes some extra fighting where Aragorn gives a little head nod to Boromir.
Yeah, I like that.
After helping him out.
Just look at it. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that the hobbits are always, like Tolkien said, that the hobbits were very, very good at throwing rocks. And so Merry and Pippin get a few good ones right at him. It's still not enough.
Yeah.
And now that mithril shirt is brought to bear.
Now,
okay.
I've always wondered what the impact, how can I say, the mithril on the spear would look like, if it's just bented, or what the spear would look like after it has been thrust against some mithril.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And also makes you wonder, even if the piercing blade did not go through the chainmail shirt, wouldn't it have been a pretty bad bruise, or at least a broken rib or two?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
but it looks
just because the force behind it. Yeah.
Well, we also have this exact question comes up when Shelob stings.
Yes,
Frodo.
Thank you.
And it's presented just the same way the troll has stabbed him here. There's still the question of, well, how did you get past that mithril, or did you?
Yeah, that was. Well, I guess we'll talk about that when we get to Return of the King. There you go, got him down.
And all of a sudden, we feel a little bit like the cave troll is a pitiable creature. All of a sudden, sad thing.
I remember Peter Jackson saying, like, he imagined the cave troll belonging somewhere deep in the caves. Had a mommy and a bed and a glass of milk, and he ain't going back to that anymore. One of my, I liked how in Hobbit 3 they brought back the Mithril because you had to see that. But one of my biggest problems with that in that they never really used it. They never really showed its function in Hobbit 3. Like no one stabbed him or Bilbo or nothing like that. It never was utilized. It was more just setup than anything else.
Indeed.
The Bridge of Khazad-dum.
This is we're deep within the segment that was shown at Cannes. It's the Cannes segment starts with the Fellowship's arrival into the Chamber of Mazarbul and the discovery of Ori, and who has written the records of what happened to them, and Balin's tomb. And I'll tell you with a quick shout out when it happens, when the footage ends, because it was meant to be the world's biggest and best teaser, but it includes a big chunk of the whole climactic sequence that we have here in Moria.
Now, what you saw, was it a rough cut?
Appears, but we don't get the final showdown with him.
Okay. Now, what you saw, was it a rough cut, or was it all complete?
It was all complete, and they pushed up the production schedule to finish everything on the sequence so they could get it done early and show it at Cannes.
Ah, okay. This is just seeing the fires, the shadow of the fire, I guess is the right way, or a reflection of the fire just seeping through the hallways.
It's really brilliant.
Peter just takes advantage of this moment to just show how the stakes of the situation. He's just elevating it more. It's like, what is this new creature that they're encountering?
There's a relationship between the Balrogs and how horrible Morgoth was to the earliest elves. We get a cut shot right now. We'll cut from Gandalf, that shot, to Legolas, where we see on Legolas's face an ancestral fear.
Yes.
Of these demons going back to the First Age. As if, even though he's one of the elves, the woodland elves that never went to go see the two trees of Valinor, it's as if the elves have some kind of shared ancestral memory of what this creature is.
Yeah, and even Gandalf, because it just from his look, he even conveys a look of a dark past between him and these creatures. Are the Balrogs considered Myron spirits as well, or are they just?
Yes, they are. They are Maiar spirits.
Okay. This I really love this shot. This is just incredible.
Yeah, you certainly are getting your money's worth on these bigatures.
Oh my gosh. Well, I liked in this was in the book. There's none of this. It was just a straight to the to the bridge. But here you had a situation where you needed to put the Fellowship somewhat in peril.
Well, it's very filmic. It's very exciting, even though it never happened in the original. And to the filmmaker's credit, he managed to make it as pulse-pounding as he could.
Ah. I can imagine all the girls just cheering at that moment. When Legolas shoots him in the forehead. Here we come. Nobody tosses a dwarf. And look what happens.
All the eye rolling that happened with my audience, because either you laughed at that joke or you were just rolling your eyes thinking, oh, is that what Gimli is reduced to? Some thought that it was, an indignant way to present our only dwarf in this whole 3 films. But, everyone was game for it by the end, and all the dwarf tossing jokes are fulfilled in the Two Towers.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's kind of sad that they didn't use anything in Return of the King, but I like how here Aragorn and Frodo are in a situation that's dangerous, that's that's perilous, and they need to kind of get through it together. Because you don't really get that throughout the rest of the next two movies, you know. But also, what this scene continues to enforce is he swore to protect Frodo, and this is just a scene showing that he is going to protect him or stand by him in this difficult situation. Now, Cliff, the scene that we're approaching is probably one of the most iconic scenes from the book, and for you who knew about, you know, McKellen being cast as Gandalf, was this the scene that you were just dying to see McKellen act in?
And yes, the answer is yes, and here is the spot where the canned footage stops. Right there.
Ah.
Oh, that's epic.
Or the Balrog, and everyone in the audience just, forgive the phrase, but everyone just loses a brick in their britches. It's just, everyone's in complete mind-blown situation. At the Cannes Film Festival, they had a 10-minute standing ovation for this segment that was shown. It sets off right there where the Balrog roars right at the camera.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is the part of the performance that I was most looking forward to, because Ian McKellen is actually in the middle of casting a rather complicated spell. Every word he says is an invocation of what the spell is supposed to be.
This scene, I mean, I can just see why he was nominated for the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, and this scene just shows that. And McKellen and Gandalf, I should say, is just towering. He towers over this creature. Just the dialogue, and
Indeed, he does.
Here it comes. Here it comes. That is just incredible
That's
acting.
literally what he means. He's saying, "You shall not pass," and he executes it as a real future when he says those words. He makes the future change by saying those words.
Yeah,
it's just a command telling the Balrog, "Don't move." He's saying, "You won't.
You're not going to pass." Yeah, and then it just shrinks it just saddens you at this moment because you feel helpless to see Gandalf in that situation. I was shocked when he let go, because I was like, you could have saved him.
Yeah, he seemed to be holding on well enough for a moment, but there's a moment of sacrifice that is defined in Tolkien. His overall thematic concern was that a sacrifice would have to be made for the Fellowship to continue, and Gandalf was it.
Yeah.
And that's what this moment is all about.
I wonder if George Lucas read Lord of the Rings and was inspired by this moment for the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because it really is very similar. You know, both go down, both are taken out by their enemies, but in a way are kind of victorious in a certain personal way.
Indeed. Obi-Wan Kenobi almost seems to willingly, voluntarily let himself go, as does Gandalf. Almost seems to be voluntary. And it is. It's necessary for, from Tolkien's point of view, it's necessary for a sacrifice to be made because it's part of the overall challenge of reaching what he called a eucatastrophe for the characters to have by the end of their story arc. And Professor Tolkien defined that idea of something that fundamentally changes people from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And in all classic, going back to Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey and other grand scale sagas, sacrifice is always required. And no better sacrifice than that close-up shot of those tears going down Frodo's face.
Frodo is fantastic. Elijah just nailed that scene.
When I took a friend of mine to see The Fellowship of the Ring in the theater, it was my 9th. I think it was my 6th or my 9th time going back to the theater to see it. And my friend had never, ever read any of The Lord of the Rings, but he knew who the characters were from Hobbit popularity, and he had no idea what was going to happen in this story. And when Gandalf died, my friend wept in the movie theater and trembled like it was really the end of Gandalf. Yeah. I didn't give him any clue what was going to happen in the Two Towers, but it was so affecting, particularly the soloist, the vocal soloist that Howard Shore has there in the score.
Yeah.
And the use of slow motion and the way it's edited and the music, it is just sublime. It is so sublime.
Now, this was another sequence that they had to change a lot, because here's the thing with the movie: they had to change so many scenes around just to make it work or to blend a lot more perfectly. Because originally, they're actually being chased by the orcs from Moria, and then they run into the woods. Some of that footage can be seen in some of the trailers or something like that.
Yes, indeed. All the early teaser trailers have lots of footage of Moria orcs coming out in full daylight with some really fantastic prosthetic makeup on display.
Yeah.
Coming to just, go after them. And who knows if there was another whole fight sequence. Here's our friend Craig Parker, who we now see in Spartacus Blood and Sand. He plays Haldir. And all this extra Haldir stuff that we have in this extended version of Fellowship is really, really cool. And it represents so much racial bias.
Yes.
Between these characters, it's really great.
I like the action figure. I actually do have the Lothlórien Haldir action figure. So I actually loved collecting the action figures as a kid.
Yeah, if you have that, I'll get Craig to sign it for you.
I don't have it in the box, unfortunately.
Oh gosh! All
right. It was a 5-pack set that brought him, Frodo, Aragorn, Celeborn, and Galadriel. So I unfortunately, I love playing with my toys, so I had to open them. I had like 112 action figures.
That's a lot. That's a great collection.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no Peter Jackson figure yet.
No, as the carrot-munching cameo in Bree. Now, these scenes where there's like a period of holding and waiting to represent that they really were not going to get an immediate safe haven in Lothlórien. I think it's cooler to have this stuff added back in to the film, and it brings the audience closer to understanding that not all elves are the same at all. You go to Rivendell, you're always welcome. Somebody's going to roll out the red carpet for you. You're always going to have dinner at Rivendell, and you can stay as many nights as you want. And if you were watching the Hobbit films before you watched Lord of the Rings films, you would think that way. That elves, and you'd realize, oh wait, there are elves like Thranduil, and there are elves like this kingdom in Lothlórien, where they're much more secretive and not welcoming at all. And I really, really like what the art department has done with Lothlórien.
Took him almost half the night just to get up those steps.
Yes, it does. And we shift from gray to blue. Notice a very quick gradation of blue color. And now we're very immersed in this distinct Lothlórien blue, this light.
I just hate to think how many accidents have happened if people taking the wrong step backwards.
Oh gosh, yes.
They should have a sign like at their house saying many days since last injury. On work sites they have that. See, look, I would be afraid just to stand right there, knowing how far of a fall it is.
Yeah, everything is so precarious.
Yeah. Now, was this after Elizabeth, the Queen Elizabeth movie that Cate Blanchett did?
Yes, I think.
Because if so, Oh my gosh, she looks.
I think Elizabeth was probably produced and shot right after this.
Oh, okay. Okay. Which would kind of explain why her part in this movie is kind of small. She looks very beautiful here, Cate Blanchett. But I think, in a way, if Elizabeth came first before Fellowship, I could see why they would cast her in this role after that film, if it came after that, if it came after this, or after that. So, and just the way that she just whispers some of her dialogue is, you just sense this just incredible knowledge, a vast amount of knowledge, a woman who has lived through since the dawn of time, who's been around since that long, I'm assuming. Cate Blanchett just embodies that very, very. I mean, just look at her eyes. Just look at her eyes. They convey so much history, and so much, and a certain tenderness to it. Just look at that.
7,000 years old.
7,000 years old. Okay.
Yes.
It's still looking good.
The way that she has her eyes lit, they have all the other actors with reflecting light, which is just a square, but for her, they put up a big, special tangle of reflective lights so that you'd see a little sparkling look reflected on the surface of her eyes.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I remember in the documentaries they said that they got like some Christmas lights and they placed it in a certain area just to get the right reflection in her eyes.
Actually, I was wrong. She did Elizabeth and a couple of other films. Like she did a golfing film with Kevin Costner called Pushing Tin. And she did a couple of these things, and even it depends upon when it was shot, because The Talented Mr. Ripley, I believe she did that as well as Elizabeth before The Fellowship of the Ring came out.
And she had a very small part in these movies, so she could have just easily have shot this stuff in less than a couple of, weeks. And definitely enough time to do those movies as well, so.
In the background, singing the lament for Gandalf, you will hear the voice of Elizabeth Fraser, or Elizabeth Fraser, if you pronounce it that way. She is the lead singer of the Cocteau Twins, one of my favorite alternative bands from the 90s.
I like this stuff with Sean. I'm kind of reminiscing about Gandalf's fireworks, talking about that stuff. Or he's forming a poem. And yet at the same time, it's still something that's still heavy on their minds just to think about Gandalf. This is a great scene. Aragorn hitting Gimli.
More comic relief for the dwarf character.
It's funny, like in the documentaries, John Rhys Davis, he would refer to himself as, whenever he would be talking about himself, and maybe with some other characters, he might say the dwarf, implicating himself, and then he would mention the dwarf. Like there was, what was it? He was talking about a fishing incident that him and Viggo went on, and then he was saying like he stated that the dwarf, none. I caught no fish. Aragorn, 3.
I love that guy. So fun.
Yeah. I really like the chemistry between Viggo and Sean. It's such a shame that these two haven't worked with each other since Lord of the Rings.
Indeed. You'd think that Viggo would apparently show up on the HBO series Game of Thrones at some point, but he hasn't yet.
As a special guest star?
Yeah, I'd love that. That would be great.
Yeah, he's probably been offered. I wouldn't be surprised.
Indeed.
Well, he can't come on with because Sean's dead now, so...
That's true.
Now, can I ask you this, Cliff? Viggo seems to be like a Harrison Ford type of mentality when it comes to Lord of the Rings. Like, I don't think he's as cold, maybe, as Harrison. Because Harrison is kind of like, maybe, at least the thing that I get from him is that Harrison feels a lot more proud of the other works that he's done besides Star Wars. Viggo, I think, kind of falls into that same camp, but I think he's a little bit more willing to talk about Lord of the Rings. But I think I do get the sense from interviews that I've heard that he is kind of like, yes, I've done Lord of the Rings, but I'm doing something else, and I want to talk about that instead. Have you ever gotten that vibe from Viggo, that he's kind of like, not necessarily against Lord of the Rings, but he feels like he's done other greater films that he's more proud of?
No, I've never gotten that sense. Viggo has always been thoroughly aware. After his son explained to him the popularity of the books before he took the job, I think Viggo's been very aware of the level of artistic import with Tolkien's, most successful book, and what it means to generations of people. I think he's been very, very aware, and always has been fully engaged in. You get a different sense of things when you talk to Viggo, because he likes to talk about a much broader canvas of subject matter. He won't just talk about the characters of the movie, The Lord of the Rings. He'll talk about much bigger concepts, geopolitical concepts behind the Lord of the Rings, and he's always been engaged, with me in our interviews on that level. And he's someone I haven't interviewed. I have not interviewed, and I have not seen Viggo in a very, very long time. Very long time. Okay. Cate Blanchett is another person from the cast who I have not. I've interviewed everybody under the sun, including Elijah many times. I've interviewed Peter Jackson many times, and everybody else in between. But I'm afraid, for one reason or another, when I was at the press, with the press, or having our meetings, or shooting footage, she was never there. I never got a chance to interview Cate, which is too bad. I've always wanted to interview her. And especially effective is this element of scrying, or the idea from the old Germanic tales and the old European folk tales that a witch or a seer, a person who has a vision, of like a clairvoyant way of scrying and looking into the water to see things in the future. Yeah. This is a motif that Tolkien plays on because it's so strong in those old Nordic legends and European tales.
Yeah. Well, in the book, Frodo does see some things, but I don't think the book captures the horror of the situation as it is shown right here in the movie, because it just shows you just how much more dangerous the ring is. I mean, each time Frodo has this revelation about something, he just begins to understand more and more how dangerous this ring really is and why he needs to destroy it.
Yeah, and the film also makes it a slightly more intimate moment as well for Frodo, because in the book Sam is with him, also looking into the water.
I think that was a good choice to take him out.
I always liked that. I always liked Sam's reaction to seeing, and his fear, upset at his father, the gaffer, being hurt or imprisoned. Mm-hmm. But like I said, this piece of filmmaking is an exercise in compression, if anything, and it's fascinating to see Galadriel have her first freak out. That's called the Galadriel freak out. That's about to happen right now, and we see her do it again in The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies. But you'll notice in the shot, her costume changes, and then suddenly it looks like she has breastplate armor. She actually has armor on now. There, see?
Yeah. Now, I've always wondered if this is her true form in terms of her her spirit, or if this is what she could become if she finally embraces her dark side, or maybe a la the Ring, if it took over her or something like that. I've always kind of wondered if this scene, this scene, if it represents any of those two ideas.
It seems that it always was an indication of what she would be like if she were under the corrupting influence of the Ring. But now that we've seen the Hobbit films, we know it's not true. It must be, perhaps, more akin to her showing her true power. And when she revealed, when a 7,000-year-old Lothlórien elf reveals their true power, it gets pretty freaky.
Yes.
Evidently. According to the internal logic of Peter's cinema universe, if she is revealing what her metaphysical power is like, it is not easy to look at. It's not easy to digest by us on this side of the mortal veil. If you're on her side of the veil, where Galadriel has been to the Undying Lands, then perhaps it's just too scary and too much and too intense for us regular mortal folk to look at and see. And maybe that's why it's represented that way.
Now we're back to Saruman.
The entire ring of Isengard and all the orchards of Isengard now destroyed. And Saruman cluing us into the real backstory of... And he doesn't mention Morgoth's name. No one mentions the name of Morgoth here in this dialogue, although Morgoth was mentioned in the previous Moria scene. But
I like the blood.
Saruman is talking about Morgoth right now.
I like the little drip of blood or whatever that black stuff, just pouring, like black saliva just coming out of his mouth.
Icor.
This scene always reminded me like of a football player just getting their gear on for some reason. It just looks like the football players just getting all their gear on and all that stuff.
Are you guys in agreement with the conventional wisdom that Lurtz, our wonderful new Uruk-hai, is a lot more scary and a lot more visceral because he's real person, Lawrence Makaware in costume, instead of being an Azog who is just a CG personality?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everyone agrees. Everyone agrees that the effectiveness of Lurtz and his presence in these scenes with all the actors, and especially his big fight with Vigo at the end, is more visceral and more satisfying than... But there's something to be said about, what they were doing with the Hobbit films and a lot of last-minute tinkering and, replacing characters digitally at the last minute.
Yeah. I always... And besides, another thing, too, with what makes Lord of the Rings so great was that, there was some tinkering involved, but I think they knew from early starts that this is what we need to do, or this is what we might have to change and all that stuff. And I think that's what kind of makes these movies stand out a lot more from The Hobbit, because they were just so painstakingly just taking extra care. Now, I do like the Lemus bread. I wish they would sell that stuff at stores. Have any of you... Oh, go ahead.
I just, I buy myself a box of shortbread cookies and I lie to myself and say, Lembas.
It is funny that he did say, it would fill up one small bite is enough to fill the stomach of a grown man. But then you see Frodo and Sam in Two Towers, they're eating some of that stuff, and they seem to be taking a lot more nibbles out of that bread.
They do. Seem to be eating a full-on piece and a half.
Yeah. I love this dagger. I've got the dagger on my shelf.
You do?
Yes, I got the dagger. A little bit bigger.
It is, but does it have the inscription on it? It's in Elvish, isn't it?
On one side, though. The other side, it doesn't.
Okay.
So it's not the authentic knife, but I do have something like it. So. Now, I noticed when watching the gift-giving scene, Boromir doesn't get anything.
I know. Well, he gets a cloak. He gets a cloak and a brooch, and that's about it.
And she probably said to him, "Yeah, you're gonna die." And that's why he was crying when she began to speak into his head. He's like, "Yeah, you're gonna die again in another movie. So, and you're gonna die a couple more times." But so what he saw from Galadriel's point of view, in Galadriel when Galadriel spoke into his mind, was all of his future death scenes from here on out. He saw his death in Equilibrium. He saw his death in Game of Thrones. So, yeah. So that's what he saw.
It's something that always pissed me off that the gift-giving scene was cut from the theatrical version of this film. I think it's really, really great stuff, and it's so much more important to things that happen in the future of these characters that we get a full explanation of what these things are.
Well, you have the Frodo getting his gift in the theatrical cut, because you had to set that up for Shelob.
Yep. It's the only one. It's the only one. But this conversation right here between Galadriel, I believe, who is the godmother of Arwen. I think that they're not blood related, but I think she's her godmother.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. I think Galadriel's daughter married Elrond. I think. I could be wrong in that. But
I think you might be right. I'll have to dig around and look for that.
Yeah. So when it came down to the Hobbit, I was kind of shocked that Elrond didn't say, "Hey, Mom, how's it going? Everything's going well over here in Rivendell. Wife's good, the kid's good, life's good." So I always like that little line, Namarie. Do you speak a little Elvish, Cliff?
Barely. I can barely read my way through a menu when I go to the land of the elves. No, I'm sorry. I don't know anything of real Elvish except a couple of little phrases like Namarie and and Norolin, things that. And there's the file of Galadriel, which a lot of fans didn't immediately recognize when they saw it in Battle of the Five Armies, but it's fully on display.
Yeah, apparently it has a lot more power than just blinding spiders and all that stuff.
The light of Erindil, our brightest star.
Yeah.
That image of her standing there, you now see the ring on her finger.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In previous shots, you did not see Nenya on her until she is at the mirror of Galadriel, and she actually explains, "Look, I'm a ring bearer too," and she shows it, and then you see it on her in other subsequent shots. It's always fun looking for the missing elven rings when they pop up from time to time.
Okay.
I'm always looking for consistency there.
Now, I've always wondered if people have said Gimli was falling in love with Galadriel. I've never took that as quite literal that he was falling in love. I just think he was very enchanted by her and was kind of eating his words after so much doubt about
Agreed. He was eating his words after, realizing how unnecessary it was for him to call her a witch, sight unseen, and to be, he was biding himself with gossip over her, and then realized her true nature. And that's really what that revelation is about. It's not romance. However, if you want to read to it on that level, you can get your dwarf and elf romance all you want in the next trilogy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or write down fan fiction. Whatever these stupid fans might do, who take it that far. This is great right here.
Real life Lurtz, not a digital Lurtz, a real life Lurtz coming at you.
I wonder how this would look in 3D.
Lord
of the Rings. That would be a really interesting experiment.
I'm glad they did not shoot Lord of the Rings in 3D, because if they did, they would not have been able to use the little trick of forced perspective that they use so frequently to make the hobbits look smaller in the same shot with someone.
Now, in the books, you don't have this threat that's hunting them. In the books, it's pretty well established that there's patrols, going around, but there's not this threat that that's hunting them. There's nothing like that at all.
Indeed. But, the filmmakers don't want the third act of the film to be lagging, and they were worried about lag because the climax of the film has already come early in the Moria sequence. And I believe Daily Variety, when they wrote their original film review back in 2001, when it first came out, I think they complained about the fact that the movie had its big, huge, brilliant action climax early, and then the film has to soft pedal its way through the end of its third act, where the Fellowship breaks apart, and they have this other little fight sequence where, characters get chopped up. But it's nowhere near what the fight sequence was we just had in Moria. But I don't think I never believed that was a structural problem with the film. The way that charge was levied against the film originally. I never agreed with that. I think the movie concludes its third act with a great sense of gravity, and it's almost elegiac, the way that Boromir dies. I was weeping as much for Boromir's death as I was for Gandalf's when I saw this film, and I don't think that was a fair criticism at the time, but I remember reading it.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I have a hard time recalling how it felt in the non-extended edition version. It might have dragged a little bit because of just these extra scenes here that are helpful in progressing the story that they did not have. But
this scene right here really slows the momentum down. But it's a great scene between Boromir and Aragorn because it is almost like a breaking. And Boromir is now pushed to the point where he's going to do what he's about to do. Now that he realizes Aragorn is no ally, and Aragorn is spitting on his shoes, saying, "I'm not going to step foot near your city." And so, even though it slows down the momentum, it's a really great dialogue to have. It helps us realize where Boromir is about to go in the next big scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Now this,
and my favorite. Just love this stuff. My favorite.
Yeah. I wish I could have gotten the little models that they actually released on the box set for the Lord of the Rings.
I have them. They're wonderful.
Oh. I do think they have bookends.
They do. Notice that your kings, Isildur and Elendil, well, actually, they're supposed to be Isildur and Anarion, but they face with their left hands pointed out, and then when we get to the reverse shot, which you're about to see in a second, you'll see that they both have their arms stretched out towards the center of the river, which is incorrect from the previous shot. The statue has shifted its arm completely from having...
It's alive!
Yes.
It's like the Doctor Who Weeping Angels.
King Elendil has that bird having a nest in its eye, and the bird flies right out towards the camera when the camera swoops by the statue's eye. You've seen that before, haven't you?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the infamous, oh, no, it's the other arm of the statue that's sticking out this way now.
Yeah.
We love continuity errors, don't we?
Well, I mean, when you have a film this great, you have to find something to pick at.
Something fun. Yeah, a little fun, something fun. A big injury for Sean Astin coming up pretty soon.
Actually, not this part. It's actually afterwards, towards the end.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was gonna finish up saying about fantasy that I think, as I was saying earlier about fantasy, I think this was the first one in probably a long time. And I know that Harry Potter, I think, came out like a couple months before Lord of the Rings, but I think this was the first fantasy film that just showed that you can take the genre very, very seriously and not necessarily appeal to children, which I think fantasy films were for the most part, but you could take something like this and apply a lot of depth and complexity and and make it somewhat relatable in a modern day, in modern times, and I think that's why people were able to latch onto it, and why it's so highly regarded as, a masterpiece of its own genre. Because I think it just stood out so much.
I agree. I agree with that assessment. It was better than we thought it would be. When this movie came out, we hadn't had a good live-action fantasy film in any way in a very, very long time. And certainly not one that had so much effort at realism.
Yes.
And there's fantasy, which is drawn in very broad strokes, painted in broad strokes, and it's like one of the reasons why New Line Cinema wanted to get Dungeons and Dragons, the movie, out of the way. They bought it and they released it 1 year ahead of Fellowship of the Ring because they didn't want to get that taste in people's mouth, in the public. And the movie-going public has very short patience for cheesy fantasy films, I guess, that are that lame. And they wanted to... Everyone was surprised. Why would they bother releasing that stupid film? And that was because they wanted to clear everyone's minds and get that movie distributed and out of the way so that this film, with the kind of gravitas that it has, would be much more apparent. And nobody could have a quick, cheap shot basis of comparison.
This is great acting by Sean Bean, by the way. You just see him just go to the dark side. Like, this is what Anakin Hayden should have done with Anakin. Just that believable sense of a good man just turning evil right in front of you, and Sean Bean just does that, and you never got that with like Star Wars with Anakin. You just were like, this guy's annoying, but here he just delivers it completely, and that's just the talent of Sean Bean, who's a great actor.
Yes, he's fantastic. He's just lost himself for a moment.
Yeah. I always liked it how I always felt like he was like, please don't run away, or else I'm gonna have to, or else Aragorn is gonna have to, I'm gonna have to talk to Aragorn, and I'm dead meat if I talk to Aragorn.
This is Amon Hen, the seat of seeing, and I was so fascinated by the way the Twilight world was represented, especially in these shots. The way that Frodo can actually see across such a great distance to the heart of the Ring's master.
Now, I've always, not wondered, but if these are actually visions that he is seeing, or it's actually Sauron himself, because if Sauron is seeing him, he would know who would have the ring and where it's at, probably.
Yes, actually. There's a consistency question about that. I'm led to believe that Sauron did, while Frodo was wearing the ring, Sauron has an awareness of Frodo, but perhaps he hadn't done GPS locating on him yet, but he knew it was him.
And of course, I would also assume that the Ringwraiths are out of commission at this point, so he can't send anybody to do some searching. So, I like this. You just see Aragorn. Well, you just see just this small example right here of Aragorn's strength as him just resisting the Ring of Power. And this is, I think, just a small little taste of the power of his true nature as a man, and who he really is. Indeed,
you get a very good sense of scale between these characters. Even with these tight close-ups, you get a sense of how much larger Viggo is. And now, as Frodo is about to run and leave the camera, there's going to be a really popular wisp of his cape, and I think they have Frodo's cape on a string. There it goes. Did you see it?
I didn't see the string, but I did see the motion. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a string.
They must have digitally removed that wire, because there's some kind of wire making Frodo's... It's a famous cape twirl as he runs off camera. And now we have the real last battle of the film.
Yeah.
Which is actually more of like, instead of an action sequence, it's more about, all the characters suddenly losing their cohesion all at once.
It kind of reminds me of what Aragorn's doing. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Yonjimbo, the Kurosawa movie, where
yes.
Toshino Mifune went up against several of the town's outlaws. A little bit overwhelming odds. One man against overwhelming odds, and
indeed, it is. It does have a feel of that.
I just love this. Just stabbing him in the gut and just punching them. It's just it's like, yeah, that's how you treat the bad guys. Just kick their butts massively.
It's more satisfying to me that the orcs are speaking in messy, sloppy common tongue instead of speaking in black speech with it all being subtitled. Well, we'll have much more exposure to this in the Two Towers, but I have to say I much prefer my orcs speaking in English instead of having to read their subtitles, because they're just the guttural, sometimes comical presentation of heavy Cockney accents and lower working class Englishman accents in the orcs is very funny to me, and it might have been to Tolkien as well.
Yeah. Oh, here's some great stuff coming up right now with the three hunters. Yes, I love that.
You get a lot of chopping and a lot of death, a lot of kills right here, but very little blood, and that's how they managed to keep their PG-13 rating. Was you can have all the kills you want, but you need to have a lot less blood.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked that these movies were able to maintain a PG-13 rating instead of going for the full rated R. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a lot more gory death scenes with some of the orcs. A lot of beheading, so. Orlando Bloom to me is like a modern day Errol Flynn. I always
very much so.
This is a great shot right here. I think they had it on a cable and they just slid it down the woods right here.
Yeah, I think it was on a zip line right above. It's pretty cool.
Oh, I love this extended scene right here. Just he stabs and then he takes out this one orc. Just love that. Now this is where I find the violence to be a little bit disturbing, because he just stabbed him in the face. That was kind of. Well, maybe can Sean Bean live? Maybe he will live. Maybe. Let's hope.
In the words of Gilligan, I saw this film 3 times. He died every time.
Maybe he'll live. You never know. Yeah, I think he's gonna live. I think he's gonna live. Yeah, I'm pretty positive. Well, maybe not.
You guys.
Maybe.
This
is a great
I think
death
it's
scene.
so much more effective to have that close-up of Lawrence Makware in the outfit. It's so much more effective than a digital Azog. It really is to me.
Oh yeah,
it is. Yeah,
just this
it's great.
Just this evil, and the way that he just lurches his head forward, where his eyebrows are just kind of almost covering his eyes. Just look at that. I mean, he's terrifying. I'm terrified of this guy, and I was 10 years old when I saw the movie in theaters. So I was really terrified by this monster. Yeah, honestly, he makes me even forget the Ringwraiths, how terrifying they are. But We gotta talk about the deaths. Just this scene right here. Sean is just acting his heart out in this moment.
I wrote in my original film review 15 years ago that this is where the film definitely starts to feel like a Kurosawa influence over the proceedings in a very good way. And I mean that in a great way.
Yeah.
It's just the best way to handle this type of tragedy. And these two characters, Merry and Pippin, an unexpected fire from them, and a very complicated digital compositing shot right there to keep Dominic Monaghan's face on right there. Very tricky. And still maybe a little wobbly, but it was a last-minute thing they had to do. But it's this is so amazing. Some of the best depictions of Boromir's tragic demise are depicted in paintings. Some of the best paintings from, Tolkien artists like Tim Kirk or the brothers Hildebrandt. The kinds of paintings you'd see in the old Tolkien calendars from the 80s, and this whole scene in the movie perfectly takes us there.
This is great. Just this one-on-one fight between Aragorn and Lurtz. I wish movies would do this more often, where the hero stabs the villain in the leg and kind of wounds him, kind of gives him the upper hand. This is great right here. This is just disgusting, where he just licks the blood. It's almost as if he just loves the blood or something like that, like a Dracula.
Loses another arm, but no blood gushing where he's lost that arm. But a brilliant send-off.
Yeah.
And lots of crowd applause every time.
Yeah. When I saw it for the first time, people were like, "Yes! Chop him off!" It's at this final moment right here that Boromir really, truly realizes the era of his ways right here.
Great performances, and really well done. I give Peter the credit for casting just the right people for the right roles. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. I like how just his Boromir is seriously doubting, is accepting the failure of his race, but then he is like so reassured when Aragorn says, "I will not let the White City fall, and nor let our people fail." You just see this reassurance, a small bit of a glimmer of hope in his eyes, just as he's dying, that his city and that their people could be saved, and Sean conveys that very, very well.
This is a curious look on Legolas's face, because he's not used to seeing people die at all. And it's been said that the elves have a lingering jealousy of men, because men have a different destiny after death than the one that Ilúvatar has designed for elves, and they have a totally different afterlife. And so I see lots and lots of subtext in Legolas's look on his face when he looks over at Boromir's dying form, and has this look on his face which is a mixture of feelings.
Well, Sean Bean didn't make it through the movie, so we will see him in Two Towers, but that's a flashback.
It's a beautiful tableau.
I've never really noticed the tear before in Aragorn's face. I always notice him smiling but I never noticed the tear before.
Oh no! I've always seen that tear. That tear, I've always noticed that and appreciated it. We've actually had a lot of deaths of major characters dying, and by the time you finish the Hobbit film, no one has died.
No.
By the time you finish the second Hobbit film, no one has died, except for
in the first 5 minutes of Hobbit 3, the dragon does die.
Yeah, and it all spirals into the third film. But here we have a moment where we're brought back to our dialogue from Moria, and the crystalline blue of Frodo's eyes is just something you fall into.
Are those Elijah's natural eyes, or does he have contacts?
Nope. That's him.
That's his natural... Okay.
That's him. That's how he looks. Ian also has strong blue eyes. But Elijah's eyes are just luminous. And
it's funny how they match up the eyes when they transition from shot to shot.
Yeah.
Now this is the part where Sean had his accident. What's coming?
It's true.
Up.
This shot where the ghost of Gandalf appears and Frodo hears his memorable words, it was like you might as well just give Ian the Oscar. Just give Ian the Oscar right then and there. Mm-hmm. But it was not to be.
Yeah. Who won that year?
Jim Broadbent.
Okay.
For Iris.
Okay. I've not seen that film, so...
Jim Broadbent is a good friend of Ian's, and it's, I think Ian was pleased that he actually lost it to a friend of his who was most deserving.
Yeah.
Now, this is where, right there, Sean just sliced his poor foot.
And then they had to fly him to the hospital, I think in Wellington.
They did, actually. Didn't they airlift him out of there?
Yeah. And then him and Elijah were joking on set, and he was saying, "Can I get to keep any of your stuff if you die?" And he's like, yes, Master Frodo can keep any of my stuff. Whatever you want.
Yeah, I remember watching this for the first time. I, not read the books or anything. I'm thinking, come on, they can't kill a third person right now.
Oh, I know.
No, they can't do that.
I think we were under that impression,
exactly. Too. Everybody around me was thinking, how many more people are going to die?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the novice audience who's not read The Lord of the Rings, and they really don't know how many more lead characters are about to die in the film.
Actually, to be kind of honest, spoiler alert, everybody, no more members of the Fellowship die after this. So, which I actually kind of, as a kid, I always thought that maybe more could have or should have died, but we'll talk about that another time. So, but this is a great acting scene by Sean, and this is perfectly setting up, the relationship in the next two films, because in the next two films, Frodo's strength, wears down, and his only support and means is Sam. After this point,
it's true. It's a very nice reoccurrence of the Shire theme at that moment, and a very sad departure for Boromir. Boromir gets to a funeral than Thorin did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they did shot the Thorin funeral scene. I don't know why they didn't put in the theatrical cut. So,
I wish I knew as well. It really needs to be in there.
It is. Well, they did shoot it. They just didn't put it in there for some reason. And I like how Aragorn, with the two of them are just like thinking that they've failed, but Aragorn just reassures them that, not if we stick together, we will, try to save our friends. The Fellowship isn't dead yet. We're still alive. Our friends are out there. We have a mission to fulfill, So the Fellowship is very much still in good. It's still active.
Howard Shore brings us back the Fellowship theme right then and there, as Vigo says those words. Exactly. I always thought that the dialogue was really, really excellent until Aragorn's last line, where he says, "Let's hunt some orc." And I always thought that line of dialogue sounded like something that you would get out of a toy if you pressed its digital chip.
Yeah.
Or maybe like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or one-liner right there.
Used to be that talking action figures and toys had a pull string, but now they're chips. But still. Audience members show their frustration with Fellowship of the Ring in the next coming seconds when they sit up or they even stand up out of their chair and say, "What? It's not over yet?" And those people didn't even know that there were 3 movies at all.
Yes.
That was me. Mm-hmm.
That was me too.
Really? Really?
Yeah, I was 9 or 10 when I saw the movie the first time and didn't even know there were books attached to it.
And you didn't know there were 2 more movies coming. So
no clue.
No, me neither.
How many times have you heard people actually cry out loud, "What?"
I know I did. My mom was like, "What? This is it?"
Yeah, me and my entire family were like, well, except for my mom. She read the books growing up in school, and so she was familiar with them. The rest of us were like, "What? That's the end? Huh? That can't be the end."
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, during the 2002 and 2003 were some of the most memorable years of my childhood. Because just the anticipation. And, mind you, I was coming onto the OneRing.net, checking up on the latest stuff, news following the 2 other films, I should say. So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Well,
we did get a lot of attention. The fan community really wanted to know what was going on.
So, oh yeah, definitely. Well, we're done. Film 1 is done.
Congratulations to our audience and to you guys. Thanks for letting me join you. This has been a fascinating look back to see lots and lots of familiar things with fresh eyes, and also to find how interesting this experience is going to be different for the next generation of young people who are going to watch the films in a different order than the way they were originally released in theaters. How's it going to be, you guys think, for someone who comes to this film, Fellowship of the Ring, as movie number 4 in their ongoing series? What do you think?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if they're going to have the patience to be able to sit through it. It is very slow pace in comparison.
I think people...
In comparison, you mean to
the Hobbit films, just the way they pace and edit, with all the laughs and gags and action.
Yes.
It's a whole different genre almost.
I'd like to believe that is deliberate, because the storytellers are letting us know that we've left behind the golden-hued and innocent fairy tale world where Bilbo has adventures with a certain level of stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And now the tone, really the overall storytelling tone of The Lord of the Rings, I think should be different, so that we can actually identify higher stakes, larger scale, and more gravitas. And look at this. I'm looking at all the credits thinking, really, Alan Howard, the voice of the Ring. I wonder if
at the very bottom.
Yeah, he's always first.
Yeah. That's what happens when you get a W for your last name. Anyway. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for our very first audio commentary on Story to Screen. This has been a blast.
It has been.
Yeah,
very much.
Cliff, thank you very much. By the way, this is not the end, folks. We've got 5 other movies left. But yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, we'll force you to sign a contract that will state that you will join us. No, we'll
do the next 5. I would love to do my best to be part of these next chapters. But tell me, what do you guys prefer? Are you going to obviously we're recording these in order of when they were chronologically released in theaters, and we'll do the Hobbit films last, right?
Yes.
But I'd like to just, give it a little bit more discussion about what you think about, newcomers to these films, watching them in the eternal chronological order. Do you think it's a benefit for them? You said that you didn't think they would sit through it because of the change of the pacing.
I mean, it's hard to say. On one hand, it's just a very different film. Just the people I know who enjoyed the original here, the Lord of the Rings, did not enjoy The Hobbit whatsoever. And I'm finding the opposite to be, true in the same way. The people who enjoyed The Hobbit just didn't really care for these as much.
Huh. That's interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that reverse course. I've heard the youngest, the 15-year-old kids that I talk to on the live show every week, they say that they love The Hobbit and they love The Lord of the Rings equally. They're completely absent of the conventional wisdom of older book fans who think that the Hobbit films were, a bit overstuffed and padded with too much extra stuff. I have yet to hear someone say that they didn't like one over the other. I'm more interested in seeing what it would be like if you did a 6-film marathon, maybe not all on the same day, but would it be better for you as a brand new audience member who's never seen any of the films?
Yeah.
Would it be better for you to get on the ground floor with An Unexpected Journey and experience the gradual elevation of tone in the story, as it is inherent in the book, The Hobbit itself? It starts very light, very fluffy, and it's a kid's fairy tale, and there's talking trolls who have funny Cockney voices, and it's all very comedic and very harmless. But then by the time you get to the end of The Hobbit, where the clouds gather, and there's that other chapter, The Clouds Burst, things become much more elevated in tone, and as we discover, it becomes more like the high romance that would be a hallmark of what The Lord of the Rings was throughout. And maybe the films are to be, beneficially, for the audience, beneficially watched all 6 of a piece from the beginning. What do you think, Chris?
I was thinking about that the other day, and I was going to bring this up when we did the Hobbit films, because I think it's almost like with the Star Wars prequel films, with Palpatine in those movies. You watch Palpatine, you're not too, you as a fan who's seen the prequel, the original movies, know who that character is, but if you're a new fan, coming in just fresh, who may have seen the movies but don't really look into who's who or who plays who, I think kids are more surprised by those moments. I think if in this case, with the Lord of the Rings, you have Sauron, and then you have in the first 3 Hobbit movies, it's like, man, Sauron, what's up with all this stuff with Sauron and the ring? What's all this stuff about? And then you watch the prologue of Fellowship, it's like, so that makes sense of why there's such a big deal with Sauron.
Indeed. It's nicely set up. And wow, okay, yeah, I appreciate that point of view too. I think this will be something judged by the next generation of film lovers behind us, or yet to come. And here we are. Special thanks to the charter members of the Lord of the Rings official fan club. This is where the credits go on for another 20 minutes.
We're gonna have to wrap it up. I probably might have to. Yeah. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for joining us. Cliff, it's always a blast to have you on. Looking forward to the next 5 more times that we have you on, and maybe the additional 3 if we do the animated movies. Maybe.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. It is a distinct pleasure, both of you guys. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was great.
No problem. We'll be happy to have you back on as soon as possible. So
all right.
We'll arrange that in the next couple of months. We're going to be booked for the next couple of months with shows and all that stuff. So
get to it when we get to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to them when we can. But
okay, everyone, thank you again, and I'll be looking forward to next time. And to the audience, thank you for sharing some of this delightfully offbeat, geekish chatter. We really appreciate it. It's really fun.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
See you.
Cheers.